Oh. All right, you guys ready? Good evening. Call the regular meeting to order of February 10th, 2026. With us here today, we have Mrs. Bardenwerper, Mr. Lee, Mrs. Flynn, myself, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, Superintendent Testani, Mrs. Rinaldi, Mr. Krasnov, and Ms. O'Neill. If I could ask everyone to please rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I apologize, as part of the roll call, I did forget Mr. Asa, who is with us online. At this point, we will open it up for student reports. I think it's turn to come over to Ludlow to start us off, please.
Good evening, everyone. Firstly, Ludlow held its annual winter pep rally on Friday. Students from each class competed against each other, as well as the faculty in various competitions. And then later, the Ludlow boys basketball pulled out the win against Ward by a score of 60-57.
And recently, just a shout out to our girls track team that placed third overall at their FCAC meet, and many athletes achieving all FCAC status or qualifying for states. And a special shout out to athlete Lexi Lockwood, who's currently ranked #1 in Connecticut for shot put, and she set a new meet and school record at the meet. So we wish them all good luck at their state competition this weekend. Also, the class of 2028 is selling roses this week as a kind of a Valentine's Day fundraiser to raise money for their class.
Last night, New York Times bestselling author Jeff Salingo, author of Dream School, provided college admissions tips and advice for Ludlow and Ward parents. And lastly, the Mandarin classes and Asian Cultures Club will be sponsoring Lunar New Year's activities in the coming week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And our representatives from Ward.
Good evening. Good evening, board members. So last week on Wednesday, we had Future Mustang Night, where Fairfield Ward High School welcomed the incoming 9th grade families. And on last week, Mr. Moore from the CIAC held a second meeting with the Leadership Council at Ward, and they built upon the culture at Ward. And at the end of the month, he will be presenting in front of the student body. As well as, I'm excited to announce that our Fairfield Board DECA will have their State Career Development Conference, which will be held on February 26th.
Our grade 9 through 11 students have met with their teachers and counselors and are now finalizing their course selection for next year. Additionally, our music students who made the Western Region ensembles were unable to audition for all states this weekend due to all schools shutting down because of the weather. So they will be recording their auditions tonight and submitting them, and we hope to have good ward representation as we usually do. And finally, our girls basketball team won against Ludlow this Friday.
Okay, so the French classes took a trip to Quebec. I was also on that trip. So it was an 8-hour bus ride, and on the first night we had a murder mystery themed dinner. And then on the second day, we went to Ice Hotel, snow tubing, and the Winter Carnival. On the third day, we visited Old Quebec City, and we went shopping. And then on the fourth day, we went shopping again, and then we went on a ferry ride. Yeah. Overall, it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. I just want to say thank you to Madame Connolly and all of the chaperones for organizing the trip. And finally, we have been celebrating Black History Month at Ward. So my best friend Deliana and I have been doing the morning announcements at Ward. So every morning we talk about Black historical figures who often go unrecognized in history. So we wanted to put a spotlight on them. Claudette Colvin, who was the OG Rosa Parks. Wilfred X. Johnson, the first African American elected to the CT General Assembly. And Princeton Prime, who submitted a formal petition to the CT General Assembly demanding the emancipation of enslaved people. And we wanted to say a special thank you to Mr. Brown and Mr. Gavanna for giving us the opportunity to help celebrate Black History Month at Ward.
Hey, thank you so much. Board members, any questions? Mrs. Flynn.
I just wanted to give a big thank you and shout out to the student leaders and staff at both high schools. This is my first time attending unfortunately, award welcome night as a parent in the district, and it was really nice seeing a lot of familiar faces. And I was thoroughly impressed with just how much staff was there and how it was like I felt very welcomed into the ward community very quickly. So I'm sure it was the same over at Ludlow. So I just want to give a shout out to our staff and our students for being there. It was incredibly welcoming. So thank you guys.
Anyone else? I just have one question. Were you in a position to speak French? Where you had to speak French?
Yes.
Miss Kennelly, I saw French and Italian in full action at Ward. So
No, I'm talking about
Oh.
in Quebec.
Oh, in Quebec.
Yes, yes. Wait, use the microphone?
I spoke French, don't worry. I spoke French. It's okay.
Okay, just curious. All right, thank you. Again, any other questions, comments? All right, thank you so much. Obviously, you're welcome to stay longer, but otherwise, we're just going to move on with the agenda now if you need to leave. Next item is item 4, public comment. Members of the public are reminded that you can speak for up to 3 minutes, and it's so long as it's on an agenda item, as I've had to do in the past when we have a crowd. I know we also have plenty of people here who are for our next agenda item, which is the recognition of excellence for the Scholastic Art Awards. I do just want to check on how many people are planning to speak for public comment. Okay, all right, we can do that. All right, so 3 minutes, it's no particular order. Please come up and introduce yourself, give your address, and then your time starts once you give your address. Okay. So all you have to do is press it once, the long bar. When the green light goes on, the microphone is on, and you could just pull it down to you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hi, I'm Michelle Walker. I am a parent of 3 kids in the district, 1 at TMS and 2 at McKinley. And I'm going to talk about the elementary schedule. And I'm sorry if some of this is annoying, but I feel like I have to say it. Art, music, PE, STEAM, library, and Spanish are called specials at the elementary school level in our district. I like to think it's because they are special, not extra. What I think is uniquely special about these courses is that they allow for students to learn through experience. Students navigate the library, they create art, they sing, dance, and perform music. Students design projects in STEAM and play and collaborate and work together in PE. All of our specials allow for students to learn actively, to participate fully in the learning. Active learning is, of course, one of the ways students learn best. That's why I was surprised by the responses I received from board members about the possibility of cutting some time in specials to allow for a 5-day schedule at the elementary level. The main response I heard was that our teachers don't have enough time to teach all of the curriculum the board has approved. The teachers need to cover so much in the day. I noticed that none of the responses included the experience of the students. Allowing more social studies and science, adding more social studies and science to the elementary schedule is a great way to build background knowledge and explore interdisciplinary literacy. But you know what else builds background knowledge? Art, music, Spanish, PE, STEAM, library, field trips. I have watched the board approve millions of dollars worth of curriculum resources over the last 5 years, but I'm not sure if all of those materials are being used to foster active learning. I especially worry about the digital resources in this regard, but that's a comment for another day. I have read that today's children are overtaught and under-practiced, that teachers have to resort to covering material rather than have students experience the curriculum if the curriculum itself is overwhelming. I'm asking that student experience remains at the forefront of our minds, of our staff, and our board. The importance of experiential or active learning is not new. I'm thinking of John Dewey, Maria Montessori, and today Peter Littlejohn. All of these educators knew that students learn when they make their thinking visible, when they work with peers, when they own their learning. I'm asking the board to consider the impacts on students and their ability to learn actively when considering changes to the elementary schedule. To acknowledge that elementary kids learn better when they're active. Our specials allow for this type of learning, and I know some core classes do too, but I worry about the experiences of our youngest learners when I hear our teachers have too much to cover for our kids to go to art. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Should,
The green light will go on.
okay.
Good evening. My name is John Noyes. I'm the founder and the music director of the Fairfield County Children's Choir, known as FCCC. I was also an FPS music teacher for 27 years. I retired 4 years ago. I'm here with an FCCC board member, Matt Tusillo, to address you regarding the policy 3515 regarding the use of Fairfield Public School buildings by organizations like ours. I started FCCC in 1995 while teaching at Holland Hill. At that time, Holland Hill fifth graders would split for sixth grade to both Tomlinson and Fairfield Woods. Many parents mentioned to me that they wish their kids could continue singing together after they graduated. And together, those parents and I, we started the choir. We had 90 students in our first year. Ever since, a majority of our kids have been Fairfield students, as laid out in the letter that I believe you received. From the year 2018 to 25, we had between 155 and 216 Fairfield kids per year. That is between 62% and 70% of our members every year. Our non-Fairfield kids include dozens of kids participating in our Bridges to Music program. It allows disadvantaged kids from Bridgeport to participate in FCCC on scholarship. An important part of FCCC's mission is reaching all children. Their participation benefits everyone. Most of our music staff are also current or retired FCCC teachers. Lisa Betke, Ashley Zadrovitz, Jacqueline Segru-Tate, myself are just some. In my 3 decades running FCCC, I've seen the positive and symbiotic relationship FCCC has with the FPS music program. Our singers brought their FCCC training to their schools. Kevin Cotterlease, who is now Fairfield.
Mr. Noyes, I do have to ask if this is going to be on the policy. I'm not seeing where the connection is to the policy. Are you getting there? Because I do have to ask you to speak to the agenda item.
Is, I'm giving some FCCC background,
Okay.
and our board member is going to speak directly to it.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin Cotterlease is one of the FPS teachers now, and when he was brought to Fairfield to reopen the Fairfield Ludlow High School choral program in 2003, and he tells this story. In his first group, among his singers, there was a group of 7 to 8 choristers who had a more serious and disciplined approach. He asked them why they were different, and their response was, "We are in the FCCC." I believe that our group works in a symbiotic way with the FPS system in that it's like, I call it a spiral effect. The students come to us, they go back to their schools, and they all continue to improve, as Kevin mentioned. FPS teacher Lisa Becky observed that when FCCC started, it changed choral music in Fairfield. We provide excellent training and education. A large percentage of Fairfield kids have a place where they feel they can belong and flourish. The challenge
Okay,
is.
I'm sorry, sir. That's your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, if your friend
Thank you
can
very
come up
much.
and you can hand it right off, that would be great.
Good evening. My name is Matt Tasillo. Like my kids, I am a K through 12 product of the Fairfield Public Schools. I live at 81 Limerick Road. My older daughter, a senior at Fairfield Ludlow High School, has been in FCCC since 4th grade, and I joined the board in 2023. I want to highlight points from the letter I emailed all of you yesterday on FCCC's behalf. If any of you don't have it, I have paper copies with me, and I can give them to you. FCCC is a 30-year-old 501c3 nonprofit with 30 years of roots in Fairfield. Thousands of FPS kids, including my daughter, have benefited from it as their primary extracurricular. Like many nonprofits, our membership never fully recovered from COVID when FCCC staff had to, do video, choir, distance, all of that. We still have declining membership and face recruitment challenges today. Relatedly, FCCC faces serious existential financial difficulties. Tuition is our primary source of revenue, and it is declining. Connecticut arts grants and federal COVID funds have dried up. Our fundraising campaign this year fell very short. So FCCC now faces a projected $80,000 deficit this year. Our board has set multiple meetings to brainstorm solutions. One is this Thursday. A 25% across the board tuition increase that we are considering will only raise $37,500. And that assumes that higher tuition does not further reduce enrollment. Aside from its our staff salaries, the $10,000 FPS facilities fee for use of Fairfield Woods as a rehearsal and meeting space is one of our largest line item expenses. That is why BOE Policy 3515 and the potential amendments thereto matter so much. To highlight 3 points from my letter, first, organizations like FCCC should be able to avoid being branded an out-of-town organization under provision 3515B definition H if membership is either, in my opinion, 60% of Fairfield kids or over a certain head count, say 75 to 100. As written, having even one kid from elsewhere would cost FCCC its treatment under that category and shift it to a out-of-town organization. Relatedly, FCCC should qualify as a Fairfield nonprofit youth organization under provision 3515C. That recognition matters because the policy affirmatively directs you as the board members to make every effort to limit charges to such organizations because they are passed on logically to Fairfield families. Third, if FCCC is not so designated, then proposed edits to provision 3515C permit only resident organizations or nonprofit organizations to seek fee reductions by explaining how the fees will affect their ability to do programming. It is vital that at minimum FCCC is recognized as such an organization, and based on the data in my letter and summarized tonight, it received the maximum possible reduction or elimination of facilities fees. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other members of the public? Okay.
Hey, me again. Good evening. My name is John Fallon. I'm a parent of two girls at North Stratfield School. I'm speaking under policy 6144, controversial issues, because recent events are exactly what that policy is meant to prevent. A major controversial event moving toward an elementary school without a clear, transparent process and with families learning about it less than 48 hours in advance. If the district believes the decision is appropriate, it should be able to make that case in public. It must make that
Okay,
case
sir,
in
I do need
public.
you to speak to the policy, please.
Policy 6144 is supposed to be a safeguard. A controversial issue is not defined by whether the superintendent of the board or the board considers it political. It is defined by whether it is foreseeably divisive and whether it risks pulling students into adult conflict. If the district cannot reliably identify and manage that risk, then the policy or the people executing it is inadequate. If the board wants to rebuild trust, here are 3 steps that are good. First, adopt and publish a clear written protocol for outside speakers and programs, especially mandatory assemblies. Who initiates them, who approves them, what criteria apply, and when the board is notified. Second, require advance parent notice for foreseeably controversial events with real transparency, the sponsor, the educational purpose, and whether any filming, press access, or promotional use is planned. Third, commit to a public accounting of recent events and a clear timeline for records production. Trust is rebuilt with facts, not form letters. Parents accept disagreement. We do not accept secrecy or surprise. If district leadership wants trust, it must act like an accountable public body. Revising policy 6144 is a good place to start. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, so we will move on to agenda item 5, which is presentations, starting with A, recognition of excellence for. Sure.
Is it still on? The green light's on.
Yes.
I wanted to speak to the same policy. My name is Tracy Rodriguez, and I would just like to put out there that I think that the policy right now is underdeveloped, could use a lot of more substance. And I don't want to take up all the time here, so I just wanted to suggest if you could do maybe a larger working group or work with the community, just given the events that happened recently. There were so many different nuances and topics that I think fit directly into the policy that that could really use some help. So if it's possible to bring in a public discussion or public comment around how we can improve this policy so that events like last week or the week before don't happen again.
Thank you.
Hello, how are you? I'm Fatima Mateos at 286 Roseville Terrace. I'm a Holland Hill co-president for the PTA, and I'm also here to speak on policy 6144. So, I really just want to share some thoughts. We've had some discussions already with the board and other members on how we can kind of improve this policy or the, I know it's, as Tracy said, it's a bit underdeveloped. We all know what happened 2 weeks ago with the Secretary of Education, but it's not just about that event. Last year, something similar happened with an author that was canceled at the last minute for Chad Sell. So I think tonight you're voting on a policy about controversials in our schools, and I think it's worth reflecting on what that moment revealed. The issue isn't the civics education or the author, credentials. I think it's more so about the process on how these events and these organizations or these outside speakers are vetted through our curriculum. How do we know that they're aligned? Is there a process to ensure that the social studies department is, reviewing the civics education portion, or are they vetting the organizations that are sponsoring these kinds of events? And the same goes for the authors. I think it sends a very clear signal that parents are paying attention to see that, within 2 days' notice, we were able to rally and really just spread the message and collaborate to be able to make sure that we're involved in these kinds of decisions. But I don't think it's in a way that's really focusing on politics more than it is process. So, really, I just wanted to see how we can work together to accomplish that. And maybe some ideas are if we can approve external speakers and programs in advance to ensure community input with maybe 2 weeks notice rather than the 2 days, or could we create a transparent review process for determining whether a topic or speaker qualifies as controversial, because the word controversy or controversial in itself is a bit subjective, um, because maybe a subject matter is not controversial but the organizations may be controversial supporting it, or the ideations or the beliefs of those organizations. So, yeah, long story short, our children deserve schools that prioritize learning, build a community trust, and operate with transparency. And I believe that this policy can truly help us get there. But again, I think it's more so of the community collaboration with parents and the processes and all of the existing um, organizations and the boards that exist. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't want to move too hastily. Okay. All right, so I will move on to item 5A, recognition of excellence, Scholastic Art Award recipients. And for this, I'll turn this over to Superintendent Testani.
Thank you. Excuse me. This evening, we're proud to celebrate our student artists who were recognized by the Connecticut Regional Scholastic Art Awards for outstanding work in photography, painting, drawing, mixed media, and digital art. The Scholastic Arts Awards are one of the most prestigious juried art competitions in the state. Special recognition goes to Gold Key winners Daniel Flynn, Mio Nomoto, Molly Sunshine, and Olivia Wellen. Liam Donovan also earned a Silver Key and the prestigious Hartford Art Scholarship for his portfolio. Winners who received either an honorable mention, a Silver Key, or Gold Key award were included in the Connecticut Regional Scholastic Art Awards exhibition. Select Gold Key award winners from each national region will have their artwork reviewed by an esteemed panel of judges. National winners will be announced in April. So tonight, please join me in recognizing the following students: Sophia Adelsberg, Ishita Agrawal, Maya Caruso, Daniel Flynn, Holly Hemphill, Mio Nomoto.
Wait,
Students, come on up when you're
come on
named.
up, please. If your
Imani
name is called.
Pereira, Molly Sunshine, Alessia Torres, Sophia Vicente, and Olivia Wellen. Those are all from Fairfield Ludlow High School. And from Fairfield Ward High School, we have Liam Donovan, Eliana Rogers, and Finn Westkoff. And a special thank you to Michelle Hermanson, who is our art department coordinator, Michelle, and all the teachers who help inspire this creativity amongst our students. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now we'll move on to item 5B, which is the Fairfield Cares Survey results. And Mrs. Flynn, if I could turn it over to you to introduce.
About, I believe, 2 years ago, Mr. Testani asked me if I would step into the role as leadership of Fairfield Cares, and I have been there for about 2 years. So I've had the pleasure of working with Philomena, Miss Arpoya, and Scott from the library, all part of our leadership team. So I will happily throw it over to them. I've seen this presentation a bunch of times, and I'm very excited for you all to see it as well. Hello? Oh, perfect. You want me to give a little shout out? So if you guys have seen your backup, it's about 74 pages. Our committee is going to go over some highlights of that, so don't anticipate seeing all of it. It is fully included in your backup. There's a lot of data in here, so I'm going to throw it over to the committee to just hit our high points.
But again, all board members, you're allowed, of course, invited to ask questions on all of it. We just didn't think it was a good idea to go for 74 plus slides. So thank you so much for coming here tonight. We look forward to hearing your results and analysis.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Philomena Apia. I'm the program coordinator for Fairfield Cares. I have here with me Janice Oguayo, the assistant coordinator, and we have Scott Zemboik, who is part of our data committee. Apologies. Who's part of our data committee. As they said, we're going to present the parent and the student survey from our 2025 student survey that was implemented with FPS with the high schools and middle schools. It is a very lengthy presentation, but we'll give you the 11 or 10 key takeaways that we got from it, and then what we're doing with those results.
Hi, everyone. Like you said, my name is Janice Aguay. I'm the assistant to the program coordinator here at Fairfield Cares. So going into it, a little bit about Cares. Essentially, we work to prevent the substance misuse and support the emotional well-being of the youth, young adults, and families here in Fairfield. The coalition overall aims to bring the community together to help families make healthy choices so that our youth can succeed. We work with the 12 sectors here. As you can see, FPS here, you're a very major part of that, as your schools. And we operate under the DFC, or Drug Free Communities grant, and essentially it's just a 5-year grant that gives us a great chunk of money to carry out a lot of goals surrounding addressing the use of multiple substances in our youth. So goals include reducing risk factors and strengthening protective factors in our youth, and preventing and reducing youth substance use among our Fairfield youth. This is just the overview of the DFC grant core measures. I won't get into it. And specific CARES Community Coalition goals include providing resources for the town of Fairfield, like social media, newsletters, brochures, etc. Also, we provide support, we enhance skills such as Narcan trainings, and we also implement and try to reduce access to things our youth should not be exposed to, and increase barriers to things, while trying to communicate that to the parents and what they have control over in their own homes. Some more goals for you. This is the participant count for both the parent and the student survey. You can look through that. There's a lot of demographics here as well. But we're really here to talk about the key takeaways from both surveys and what we found. I think it's also important to note that over the past years that this survey has been administered, we have seen a decline in the past 30-day substance use trend. And while it's not in the presentation, I think it's very important to highlight first and foremost before going into the presentation. So going into that, the first key takeaway we found was that youth mental health distress is widespread and intensifies in high school. So this is the parent survey result you're seeing here. The left is the middle school and the right in orange is high school. So based on parent observations, 1 in 4 Fairfield youth felt depressed, 1 in 3 felt lonely, and 1 in 2 felt anxious, sometimes or frequently within the past 30 days when that survey was administered. And you can see in the next slide, this is the youth reporting and basically backs up the same information that middle school, blue again, orange is high school again, that youth do feel these emotions. They feel depressed, anxious, and isolated, and that percentage increases as they get into high school, which is sort of understandable and expected as they are going through life changes and making big decisions in their lives. Sorry.
I tend to not speak very loud, so if you guys can't hear me, please let me know. So our next takeaway is academics and future expectations are the central stressors, not peripheral ones. So in terms of high school and middle schoolers, more middle school students report bullying as a stressor compared to high school students. But when it comes to high school students, it's more academics, expectations of the future, balancing their schedule and having friends, fitting in are majority of their stressors that we saw based on their survey. For the high schoolers, as Janice mentioned, it is, it kind of makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of things that are happening as you transition into high school and out of high school, a lot of expectations, whether put on themselves or, from their peers. So that's what we got from the academics and the stressors. So in terms of stress factors, in the factors that stress Fairfield public school students by grade, we did the middle school and the high school. As I said, this is a different, more simplified image of it to see the numbers and the comparisons. The high schoolers are in orange and the middle schoolers are in blue. So the third takeaway is parents strongly disapprove of substance use, but the only exception is when it comes to alcohol. So from the survey that parents took, parents agree that substance use is extremely wrong, and they're very much against it. But when it comes to alcohol, there seems to be a different kind of sentiment about it. Alcohol is the thing where it's almost okay for their youth to partake in. So what we're trying to do as our coalition is to make sure that their messaging, makes it understand that all substances are wrong. Alcohol is not the exception because it also does affect youth, no matter if it's not as they don't think it's as big as it is. It is very impactful to youth, especially if they're student athletes and things like that. It has a lot of physical impacts and mental and emotional impacts to it. So perception of parent approval by grade, we can see that perceived parent disapproval of alcohol use is much lower compared to the other substances. When you look at vaping, it's 96%, alcohol is 75%. But then when you go by grade, alcohol is 87 compared to 63 in middle school students. So when it comes to high school parents, 87% of them, their disapproval is a lot lower than middle school. Okay, so in our data, we talk about the core measures. So past 30 days substance use. So we asked the youth, in the past 30 days, have they, partaken in any of these substances? And this is the results that we got from it. Alcohol is the most commonly used substance reported by the Fairfield youth in the past 30 days. As you can see from the chat, it's 9% compared to 4% marijuana, vaping, which is 3%, and tobacco, 1%, and drugs. So our fourth takeaway is peer norms are powerful, but many students don't want to drink, which is really, really good to see that when we asked about why they don't want to drink, most of them said they just don't want to. The ones that don't partake in drinking just don't see the importance of it, which is really great. So, we're gonna try and target our education to be more peer education so that they get to understand that not everybody is doing it, because there's a perception that you think everyone is doing something when in reality they're not really doing it. So this is a good thing to know. So in our survey, we asked students, why do they drink, or why do they think people their age drink? Most of them said to have fun, because they're in an environment with their friends. Sometimes it's due to peer pressure, to have fun, curiosity, as well as they're influenced by social media. In our survey, we did ask about social media, and they described it as a positive influence. But then 40% also said that whatever content you're viewing is also influencing them to likely drink more. So social media is having a positive and a negative influence on their substance use. So number 5, alcohol is real and relational. In terms of parents' perceptions of where Fairfield youth access alcohol, it's from parties, gatherings with no adults, and home without parent supervision. And for high schoolers, it's 57%. Middle schoolers, no, for middle schoolers it's 57%, high school is 50%. And then for those that with parents or adults are not in their presence, for high schoolers it's 60% and middle schoolers is 61%. So majority of the time when they're consuming alcohol is because there is no parent supervision or no parent presence at home. So sources of alcohol use. This question is more so where they're getting their alcohol from. Most of them say they get it from their parents with permission, which was quite shocking in the data. Some are purchasing it from their friends, purchasing it in around other towns, convenience stores. Both middle and high school student parents most often obtain alcohol from their parents with permission, so it's almost like a social norm in the house. And then, as I said, for location, it's mostly at parties or home with friends. Number 6, parents are comfortable talking with their youth, but prevention is episodic. Percentage of middle school and high school parents said that they're very comfortable with having conversations about substances with their youth, which is a really good positive thing to hear. So I just think that making sure that the conversations include alcohol, so that it doesn't become a norm that drugs and vaping is wrong but alcohol is okay. So including alcohol in the conversations and the messaging. Parental self-efficacy declines during high school. So we asked parents who believe they have very little control over their child's substance use. So during high school for alcohol, it's 23% compared to middle schoolers, which is 7%. And then in terms of nicotine products, it's 5% for middle schoolers and then 19% for high schoolers. As you can see, alcohol is usually the one that stands out the most throughout the survey and throughout this data analysis. So with that, homes are a key prevention setting, but often it's the most unsecured one. When we asked how secure are substances in their homes, alcohol for parents with youth in high school, it's 67, middle school, it's 66. So even though the home can be a great source of prevention if these substances are not secured or locked up. It's easier for the youth to get into it. So making sure that things are locked up. Fairfield Cares has lock boxes that we pass out during drug take back day for parents to have it so that their kids are not getting into their alcohol or any drugs, prescription drugs or substances. Number 9, parents and students agree on who teens trust. So in terms of having important conversations with parents in the past 3 months, a lot of students said that they have conversations with their parents regarding mental health, which is a really good thing to see. 6% say they have conversations with their parents regarding alcohol. So the goal for CARES is to make sure that in their next survey, in the next couple of years, maybe that increases by a lot based on the messaging that we send out. When it comes to trusted adults, the youth say they have a lot of trusted adults in their lives, whether it's friends, whether it's families, other than their parents. Their teachers are also one of the top 3 trusted adults they have, so that's a really good thing. Number 10, both groups identify peer influence as central, but prevention often emphasizes that information. So in terms of middle school parents' perception of factors that influence substance use among youth, most parents says friends' opinions or behaviors are the most important. Parent substance use behavior is 56% of that perception, and then social media is 54% of that. When you look at the high schoolers, which is the one in orange, it's 66% for parent substance use behavior as an influence. Friends' opinions or behavior is 61%, and social media is 42%. So as you can see, alcohol is pretty much normalized across both perspectives, whether it's with middle schoolers or high schoolers. The proportion of middle school parents who indicate at least some youth in their grade use substances in the past 30 days is high for this one. The highest one is vaping, nicotine, and then alcohol is 47% for middle schoolers. But when it comes to high schoolers, alcohol is 93%, so it's quite high. And then vaping is next, it's first with 94%. So as we said, we're gonna skip quite a bit of the chunk of the data and then go to what we're gonna do about this information as our coalition. So it
I
might
think
take,
for board members, that's page 72.
yes,
So
it's
you're
a
gonna flip
long
all
way
the to
down.
The last two. Everything in between that, guys, is just all the informative data.
Yes, it's a long way down. It's quite a journey. There you go. Okay. So we're just gonna give a few bullet points of what CARES has been doing with the previous survey that was disseminated and this current survey, what we're gonna do with it and the analysis that came from it. So due to our beautiful partnerships with the other community partners, we've done compliance checks, environmental scans with the Fairfield Police Department. So that's when we go with the police department and we go to every retailer in the town, and then we check to see if they have signs around the stores for underage age limits for alcohol, whether they're checking IDs when youth come in to buy alcohol, and what exactly their protocol is when a youth does come in, whether with a fake ID or any other thing like that, if they send them away or what exactly their process is. So we also collaborated with the FPD for Drug Take Back Day. We give out lock boxes for people to put their prescription medication in it to prevent our youth from getting into it. We did a community health expo at the senior center with the FPD Health Department Catalyst Recovery Network and to educate and provide Narcan training. We also did a Create and Calm event with Parks and Recs for a mental health event to address youth mental health. We've also done a bit of work to our CARES website so that it is more educational. So when you go to the website, when you click under the topics, you get as much information as you want, whether it's regarding social host laws, different links to lead you to more research if you need. So if there is anything that, we want to start a conversation with your youth, the Fairfield Cares website could be the first place to go for that. We've also reestablished the Fairfield Cares Youth Committee as a way to allow peer-to-peer education for the youth to have a voice and, helping us understand what exactly the behaviors are in their schools, because as much as we get the data in front of us, we're not in the schools to understand what exactly is happening. Next. This is the Health Expo. Thankful for the Senior Health Center, the Health Department, everyone that was, part of it. So this is just a little glimpse of the new website. When you go on there, you can even take a little quiz to figure out how does alcohol affect your health, and it gives you all these, fun little questions and asks you to reflect on, whether your habits are good or not. We also have brochures to allow you to have tough discussions with your youth, whether it's based on alcohol, their substance, any other substance use, or just the stresses they're experiencing in school. Regarding our next steps, due to the amazing results that we got from this survey, we're going to do a tour for the next couple of months. We're going to go around different organizations within the town and present our survey and see different ways that we can collaborate. We will be doing vaping 101 workshops as well to educate the parents and the youth on the health effects of vaping and prevention methods. We're also doing an underage drinking prevention program that's going to be done with the youth committee. They're going to be the drivers of that and come up with ways that we can campaign so that we can make everyone understand that, you know, alcohol is not the exception to the not using substances. In terms of overdose prevention, we are conducting Narcan trainings so that, you know, when youth are in the situation where somebody is going through an overdose, they can recognize those signs and, you know the ways to curb that overdose so that they can at least save somebody's life. We also have a few speaker engagements coming up. We're collaborating with FPS, PTAC, and the Digital Wellness Committee to bring in Max Stossel. So he's the founder and speaker of Social Awakening initiative, where he educates youth on social media and how to make it work for you rather than social media working for you. So ways to be well educated on your uses of social media to protect yourself. And then we also have a sober truth engagement that will be happening in Ludlow with the help of the counselor, Tim Morris. He's gonna come in and talk about his lived experience with substances. It's gonna be both for students and the parent. The parent one is still in the work, but once that is out, we'll give the information and everyone is welcome to come. So these are the few engagements and there's many more to come, but this is just a small glimpse of what we're doing. And I believe that is it. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Questions from board members? Mr. Lee?
Thanks for this study. What number percentage should the alcohol be as far as I get it, it's still, it's in the 90s, not as high as the others, but where do you see realistically this number should be? On the page 18 on the top one, I think it's 17, number 3, parents strongly disapprove of substance use, but alcohol is the exception, sorry. I feel it's wrong for my child to drink alcoholic beverages. The high school number is 91%. Where should that number be?
The goal is to at least get to half. I think 99% is quite a lot, but from conversations with the youth committee itself, the numbers make a lot of sense with what they're saying from what they see in parties and things like that. It seems as though a lot of them are very much, I don't want to vape because, it's very dangerous. But then when you ask about alcohol, it's like, it's a social norm. So we would want it to not be as normalized and as much of a social normity in the community as possible. So even if we can get to 70, the goal is maybe 50, but if we can lower it as much as possible so it's not much of a normative in the community, that's pretty much the big thing.
All right. Yeah, because I was going to say, especially with alcohol, right? We're talking Tuesday. We all know what happens on last Sunday, right? Very focused on that. You go any place in town the weekend. I know you do a great job with the kids. I just like to see potentially more on educating the adults.
Yes, so we're gonna be doing including the tour, we're doing an alcohol 101 as well to educate parents on the social host laws, what exactly that is, what the penalties are, and how best to, enforce the rules within your home so that even when you're not home, you're not having, there's safety measures in place so your youth are not getting into the alcohol cabinets and, taking those substances. So including the vaping 101, we're going to also do an alcohol 101 where we give the dangers of alcohol, especially on the youth. If your youth is an athlete, if they're, whatever passions they're in, alcohol is going to be a bit disruptive to that. So making sure parents are aware of that.
And, you need to remember that CARES is also a coalition. So while the work that they do can be student focused, the other outside agencies like the police department, the library, we can all focus on maybe more parental education and being out in the community to kind of present that, trying to get that number down.
Okay, Mr. Krasnov.
So first off, thank you. It's obvious that your coalition seems to be having a pretty good impact from the data, at least that it's showing decline almost every year over the last, 3-4 years. I do have a question about page 60. More just maybe clarification. It says 9% of high school students versus 21% of middle school students report it's easy to obtain marijuana. Do we really think, is there really 21% of our middle school students feel it's easy to obtain? Like, is that number accurate?
That's what we got from the respondents, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that might be something we want to dig a little more into.
Yes.
It's kind of alarming that
Yes.
the discrepancy versus the high school and
Yes.
middle.
Yes.
And then second, page 48. I'm particularly concerned about the tobacco and cigarette disapproval percentage. Just seems like it's changing rapidly. Is that the fact that it's in the red? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I lead him into the title of that page. There's quite a
Yeah, it's page 48, perception of peer disapproval. And it looks to me like it's saying only 59% now of the peers disapprove of cigarette use. Which we seem to be going in the right direction with people not smoking cigarette, both adults and kids. Again, another one that kind of jumped out to me. So,
So the thing with the surveys is, when it got to the high schoolers, the responses were quite low. So, as you can see with any survey, we don't know how honest they were with the survey results. So that's where, there's a bit of a discrepancy, but we are gonna, with the youth committee, we're gonna have continuous conversations with the youth that are involved to get, the role, understanding and the understanding of their behaviors to, inform the survey results as well, because we do understand that not a lot of them completed their survey, so there could be a big number of data that we're missing. So the youth committee is gonna reinforce that and help us get a better understanding on that.
no, I appreciate that. I really do.
Mr. Krasnov, could Mrs. Flynn jump in?
Yeah, of course.
Just a little insight into that because we learned a lot from the survey last year. The timing of the high schools was not spot on, and we learned really quickly that if we don't hit that mark early for the high schoolers, it was kind of a lost cause. So looking forward, we're looking to reverse the high school implementation versus the middle school. Maureen Sullivan was incredibly helpful in kind of looking back and doing, I'm not going to call it like a postmortem, but really looking back at our survey data and figuring out why it wasn't successful. I think our coalition had 3 meetings in regards to it and really fleshing out what the issue was so it won't proceed moving forward. And I just want to thank FPS and the coalition for really taking a lot of time to do that. The survey is a huge part of our work.
So yeah, the survey's amazing. So to follow up, these 2 particular ones could just be skewed, is what you're saying.
And I'll tell you, we had concerns about that as well. And if you look at the slide below, a perception of peers, some of the numbers are wonky to us, but like the alcohol kind of stays through, the marijuana stays through, the tobacco, to your point. So we saw some through lines and we just want to tighten up our work.
I completely get it. I rarely see anyone smoking cigarettes anymore, so it kind of like jumped out to me. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mrs. O'Neill.
Hi, thank you so much for all the work that CARES does. It's obvious that it's having a huge positive impact on the youth in our community. I just had one question, and I don't expect you to have exact numbers. I was just wondering how Fairfield's numbers in regards to mental health and substance abuse, how those compare to national numbers.
I will give you that in one moment. If you could, I will send that to you guys in a follow-up email. Yes, okay.
Okay, Mr. Lee.
I just had 2 quick questions. One thing that stood out here when you talk about the stressors, on page 15. What caught my eye was middle school students, 15% are very stressed out over racial bias and discrimination, but that number drops almost in half in high school. What changes when they get into high school? Because it's the same kids, they're probably in middle school going to the high school, if not another group of kids. So what changes that perception in high school?
I don't know that we've broken, like,
never
so
broken
when
that down.
CARES goes through the data, like, all of the survey data in the most part is compared to our goal, the grant goals of the DFC. So I wouldn't think that to my knowledge, it was not parsed in that level of detail,
No.
but I think the coalition will be happy to go and look at anything that
Yes,
gets
in
brought
the
to
new
our
survey,
attention
yes.
and to look into.
Okay. And then the second thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it's a different study last year. Didn't in CARES last year have a section on online gambling? Did we not do that this
Yes,
year with the
yes,
kids?
we do also still have the gambling.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, that's here.
Yes.
It's there.
Okay, good enough.
Of course, if I had my glasses were
The
on.
number for the gambling
Yeah,
was
page
extremely low.
64.
And there was a lot of discussion in meetings and amongst the coalition around that. So it's still a concern.
Yeah, the topics that come in front of the coalition, we call it ebbing and flowing. They don't necessarily ever fully hop off, but I would say year to year, we see emerging trends that the coalition is always trying to approach. Mr. Tastani was good last fall, being like, we're seeing like an uptick in alcohol usage, and we kind of watch that mirror right across. So the anecdotals really are matching up with the data we're seeing, even when there's a little bit of a discrepancy in the survey pool. Is that the
Yeah.
best way to say it?
We've been focusing on alcohol just because we've seen that trend now over several surveys. And it's something that we hear in the coalition meetings as well.
Thank you.
Other board members? Okay, I also would like to thank you so much for the presentation, and more for the presentation really is the work. I mean, this is a nice bit of frosting, but really it's the work that you're doing that I'm very grateful for. One question, and not that I want to encourage social media use, but what the heck they're using it. Have you thought about having that youth committee do work on social media? Because obviously, no surprise, it's the peer influence, especially in high school, that is more profound. I mean, heck, even athletic rules and the expectations of clubs had a bigger impact than parents in high school. So that's something to, not by a lot, but you know, it was a greater high school influence. So have you thought about having that youth group try to make some targeted use of social media to
Currently
up the fear factor?
Yeah, yes, currently we were focusing on alcohol, but you know, that is something that we will add to it as, you know, we finished with the alcohol campaign, because from conversations, it seems as though they want more information on alcohol use because they go to parties and, you know, they see a lot of the behaviors with their peers and classmates. So that's something that they wanted that to be a priority. So I think social media, starting off with the Max Stossel speaker, I think that will open up the conversation on where we'll move on with social media for the youth committee.
You know, I just think of the world of very, very short attention spans, that you get a successful TikTok, hey, did you know that?
Right.
And that startle moment could be useful.
Right.
And also, I just wanted to clarify, the second speaker you said would be at Fairfield Ludlow High School, but is that just the hosting site? It's being advertised at both schools, or is that only open to Ludlow parents?
For now, we're starting at Ludlow for the student session, but the parent one is open for any parent within the community who wants to come. That one will probably be in the town so that it's accessible to everyone. But in terms of the student one, it will be at Ludlow, and it will be where we start off, and following that, we'll extend to the other high schools.
Gotcha. Okay. Oh, sure, Mr. Tassani.
Yeah, and for Max Stossel, we'll have one at each high school, one at each middle school, and there will be a presentation for parents, I believe on April 29th, but we'll get that information out as we get closer. So there will be a parent night to hear Max as well.
Thank you. Mrs. Flynn.
I just want to give a gigantic shout out to our coalition and the leadership of Fairfield Cares. This is like a lot of hard work for a lot of volunteers as well as our coordinator. So I just want to thank you guys for your immense work and all you do for our youth and our schools and our community. I'm incredibly grateful for it. Thank you.
And since you can't thank yourself, thank you, Mrs. Flynn, for your work with Fairfield Cares.
They make it look easy. I'm happy to be a stakeholder with all these wonderful people. Thank you.
Okay, finally, no final questions. Yes.
To answer your question, with the for the alcohol use for the national, we do have data for the CT high school students in the 2023 comparison. In terms of CT high school students, their alcohol use is 22.1%, and for Fairfield Youth, it's 16%. So it's a lot lower, which is really great to see. Yes.
Especially considering we have 2 colleges in town. Sorry.
All right. All right. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your presentation and look forward to what we hear in the future.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5C, elementary scheduling. And Mr. Testani, if you'd
Yep,
like to
so-
kick this off?
Sure. So we were asked by the board to take a look at the elementary schedule. We convened a committee of administrators and teachers to come together. The charge was you're starting an elementary school from scratch and you have to build a schedule and work within the contractual limits of teachers, collective bargaining, as well as the start and end time to the elementary school day. And we kept reiterating that to the committee as we got into deep discussions. All the departments were part of the committee and had input. And you're going to see some powerful slides when it comes to the current number of minutes and how they're allocated. And then at the end, we'll talk about options. And then the board can, at that time, have some discussion, answer some, we'll take some questions tonight, but also then we ask that feedback is then provided to the curriculum committee as we start trying to work through some of the recommendations from the board and what they'd like to see as we move forward before we come back at a later date with a proposal to the board. Again, not for a voting item, but just so that we're on the same page in terms of what this is going to look like as we move forward. Again, we looked at everything. You're not going to see a recommendation tonight of this is what we want to see, but just present the facts and get the conversation started here at the board table, because I think we've completed our work as a committee and are ready to obviously bring it forth tonight. We have two members of the committee, Dr. Zavajancic and Mrs. Callahan, who's a former library media specialist and now currently an assistant principal at Roger Sherman Elementary School. And we'll turn it over.
Good evening, everybody, and my apologies on my voice. It's been dwindling by the hour, so bear with me. So as Mr. Testani had said, our committee began working in the late summer through about a month ago on multiple iterations of an elementary school schedule. The slide before you this evening on the PowerPoint is what led us to this decision, particularly the bottom portion of it, which is labeled cycle overages. What that means is from grades K through 5, the 40 minutes in K and the 145 minutes in 5th grade are doubled minutes. They're overages, meaning they're not happening. So I want to be clear with that. It does not mean we're asking for more of something or less within there. These are things that are not happening. And how did we arrive at that? The two bullet points at the top, we have 395 minutes in our elementary school day from start to finish when students arrive to dismissal. And we have 2,370 minutes over our 6-day cycle, which is A through F days that continue on. I'll show you where our minutes are allocated in slides 2 and 3. With that being said, those numbers are over the 395 per day and over the 2,370 per 6 days. So basically the 5th grade would need another 145 minutes in that 6-day cycle to meet the criteria that I'm going to show you. So here is the things that happen every day for the most part. Language arts, math, science, social studies, coming to school, arrival, dismissal, transition times, you'll see when on there, which is our intervention period, lunch and recess. Again, these happen on a daily basis. Over those 6 days, on the next slide, you will see where our specials and our arts, unified arts are. They vary by grade level, which is what the second column is, and I'm not going to go through them each individually. But you'll see, for example, Spanish is a 3 through 5 subject. It is not considered a prep period for the teachers. It happens 30 minutes twice in the A through F cycle if you're reading it from left to right. In addition, music has the asterisks next to it because they do different things throughout the grades as well. And what is not accounted for up there are individual pull-out lessons, which again, we didn't put on the slide, but that would be in addition to the minutes that I just showed you 2 slides ago that are not accounted for in those overages. So those would be added in as well. So we approached the committee with some principles that came out of it, particularly these 5 here, which we'll go through, is what kind of cycle or rotation that we would want if we were building a school from the ground up, from the start, without having any historical knowledge. And what I mean from that is, do we want a 5-day rotation, like a Monday through Friday, a 6-day like we currently have, an A through an F? Should the Monday through Friday be an A through an E and rotate, etc.?
Dr. Zavjancic, I'm going to ask you to wait one moment.
Sure.
I want to make sure that everybody is set on the preceding slides before we get into the process. In other words, that what you've seen now, what Dr. Zavjancic has spoken to, and the slides we've seen and the curriculum committee has already been presented with is what's the issue? And then Dr. Zavjancic, if you wouldn't mind holding a minute on,
of course,
on the process of pursuing a solution. So very important, if any board members have any questions on those previous slides, or even Mr. Krasnov, if there's anything in addition that your committee discussed just in relation to those slides, anything to help us better understand this. One thing I do want to clarify, so that, again, the 5th grade, the instrument pullout is in addition to these minutes, that's not accounted for here.
That is accurate. So, yes.
So, takeaway would be that to start every school year, every single one of our general ed classroom elementary school teachers is being presented with a task they cannot accomplish.
That is accurate, yes.
Okay, Mr. Krasnov.
And from there, we asked where the time was coming from, and it sounds like it's kind of coming from different places. Unfortunately, a lot of times it comes out of some of the core subjects like the science and the social studies, but it does vary depending on what the particular schedule looks like, especially on that day. And then we asked, which I'm sure they'll present next, like who is involved with the committee, kind of where their thought process. They didn't present anything to us at that time. We just asked questions and spitballed some ideas from our end, just to give you background on what we had done going forward from there.
Yeah.
If I can
go ahead, Dr. Zavjancic.
Mr. Krasnov brings up a good point that I think Ms. Callahan can explain as well, because she builds her schedule every year. So where does time come from is a big question. When I say we're 145 plus minutes over in grade 5, it's different by grade and by teacher depending how the schedule is written across our 11 buildings. So if you can just explain what that looks like in practice.
Yep. So the time that is unaccounted for right now, because really we account for a 40-minute special. So the 2 Spanish classes, an extra special, the extra long art, the extra chorus, those are all unaccounted for minutes, but they happen. So that means they have to come from somewhere. And so they come out of the day that they happen because we don't have Spanish teacher every day. So if you look at one 4th grade teacher's schedule at Sherman, there are only 2 days in a 6-day cycle that actually match the minutes that we're asking them to do. 4 days out of the 6-day cycle, minus 30 somewhere, probably science and social studies, for Spanish. Then the next day is minus 40 for the extra special. Then the next day is minus 30 for Spanish. And then the next day it might be another minus 30 for the long art. So there's a lot of minutes out of the majority of the day in 4th and 5th grade. The majority of the days in a 6-day cycle don't actually match the minutes that we have up on the board of what we are asking teachers to do. It's an impossible task.
So I want to make sure that everyone, if anyone has any doubt about that, any challenge to that, because if you do, what comes next, you'll never kind of engage in that. So I want to make sure that everyone, Mrs. Flynn.
I didn't think of this in curriculum committee, so I'm just asking it right now. The play-based learning, which I'm a immense fan of, can you kind of talk through, because it's blocked out at 30, and I think we talked about this, James, Dr. Zavjancic,
when it was proposed, it was kind of explored, and if I'm remembering this incorrectly, you tell me that it was gonna be like embedded. Is that how it came to pass, or are you now needing those 30 minutes? Maybe a little insight.
It is a separate block at this point of 30 minutes.
And it's not over, because if you look at the kindergarten minutes, they're less. It's actually, kindergarten is built in. So if you look at kindergarten, social studies, math, language arts, it's actually less than the rest. And we did that on purpose in order to fit the 30 minutes of play in.
And was there any success in trying to like layer it on top of social studies or science? I would just love to hear the experiences, because if it's not, is it more like centers right now? Is it looking kind of like that?
Purposeful play, you can, if you walk in a classroom, it looks like centers, but it's much, much more. It's purposeful play. So depending on what they're doing at the time, there are challenges that we use that are connected to social studies. Some of them are connected to ELA, some of them are connected to science, and some of them are just open, and some of them have very specific provocations, what we call provocations, which is a problem to solve at a table. And it could be about a story that they've read, or it could be just more open-ended than that. We've had a coach, a play coach for 2 years, and this is very well-structured, well-thought-out time that are planned by the kindergarten teachers. It's also my favorite time
I
of
was
the
about to say,
day. I'll just
I'm a
say.
huge advocate of play, and especially structured play. And anytime you can embed that into our curriculum, you know, I'm a huge advocate. I just wanted to hear how it was going. This is something I could plan to support. So thank you for that insight.
Mr. Lee?
Think I'm a little confused. The minutes that we're losing in each grade, the subjects that they're losing these from, are they the core reading, the math, not just gym or Spanish? We're talking like,
No, the 40 minutes for specials is sacrosanct. You can't take out of that. So when you take it out, it comes out of, in my building, I try to not always take from social studies and science, maybe take a writing class, maybe take a small group in ELA, but yes, math.
math,
So-
reading, social studies.
Yes.
In
The ones
science.
where we're seeing the test scores actually drop being low because later on in the student's process, right? Progression, I mean, in the school.
Perhaps, yes. They come from the core. That is accurate. We are losing minutes in the core that are devoted to the curriculum.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. O'Neill?
Thank you. I was wondering if you could speak to what happens during win time, because I only know that from what my own children tell me, and if it's ever possible to take time from that period instead of another core subject.
Sure, I'll have Ms. Callahan talk about it. Right now, it is a separate block. Within there, it is for students who need intervention or enrichment, or something within one of the core blocks as well. And Ms. Callahan can talk about what that looks like for the students perhaps who don't need intervention within a classroom, because that one's pretty common, the intervention piece.
So in a 6-day cycle, we alternate. When is math a couple on certain A, B, C days, and ELA is the opposite. So you have 30 minutes for intervention. It absolutely is intervention. It depends. Our teachers also use it for enrichment, but for the younger grades, they also use it for very focused centers for ELA and very focused centers for math. In the upper grades, they use it for spiral review, which I think is really important. So certainly in our 4th grade, if they're working on a unit, they might develop a quiz or other skills in a previous unit to upkeep their skills as they go forward. Because spiral review is a really important retrieval practice for learning for kids. The teachers in Sherman, and I can't speak for the other schools, use it very wisely and very well in order to cement skills in students and fill gaps for students and extend for students.
Okay, Mr. Krasnov?
I just wanted to bring up another point. We were told there is, especially with the ELA program, there's been a little more opportunity for some interdisciplinary learning, because the way the curriculum actually is written, there is some social studies and science components to it. So as much as we're losing the time, we are able to have a little bit of that embedded in the ELA, but it sounded like the staff felt that getting back the minutes would be really important going forward to be able to do more of the core material and maybe do more disciplinary stuff, correct? As we wrote, like the science curriculum, which is coming up, etc.
We always want to do more interdisciplinary. I will say with ELA and social studies, they come up on 2 different review cycles, as do all the disciplines. So it's very difficult for ELA to plan with what social studies thinking about planning, and for social studies to then be on the heels of it. So as you know, you guys had just passed a pretty rigorous social studies curriculum that's unlike what we currently have, and it is going to need dedicated time in order to work through each of those grades. And with the background knowledge building, if you miss a grade or units, it's going to be difficult in the years to come to build upon that knowledge.
Mrs. Flynn.
This is through the chair to Mr. Testani, to Dr. Zavachanzik, and I don't know if this is too much staff time, but I think it might be a little bit helpful to maybe parse out like the addition of all these minutes. I don't know if this is too much to get like a 20. I don't even know what year 2018. Like I don't want to be cumbersome with it, but like I know I remember like math being close to 80 minutes at what, right? Am I correct with that remembrance?
It shifts from year to year. It has been more than 60 in the past.
Yeah, I believe in 2018 or 2019 that math was close to 80 minutes. So I think for this board, it might be helpful to just maybe get a baseline.
I see.
don't know.
I'm not sure that I definitely
get
hear
what
your
I'm
point.
getting?
I think historical data is always helpful,
Yeah.
but the curriculum's changed since then. So that the curriculum of that time might have been appropriate for that allocation of minutes. We've also given more to specials. The specials have become, so there's.
Yeah, I think it just might be helpful in looking at like how much we've added and where over a kind of a short length of time. Like I said, if it's too cumbersome, I'm kind of just like thinking what data the curriculum or committee may need. It kind of popped into my head. If you think it's going to be helpful, Dr. Zavachanzik, I mean, I've heard different, we passed to his point, we've passed social studies. Now we need more allocated time. Math is kind of like, where do you?
We're not asking for more allocated time, to be clear on my first slide. This wasn't, and it's not up there. The overages weren't more. We just want to give social studies what we said we were going to give them. Right now, we're not.
So to quote a teacher anonymously, that at the beginning of the year, every year, when she looks at the schedule, she says that this is a fantasy. Because we can't do everything. And I don't know the year. We went to a 6-day cycle and introduced STEAM as a result of it when Dr. Jones was here, but I don't know exactly which year that was. Again, we understand the importance, but if we're going to give the 40 minutes to social studies, the 40 minutes to science, the dedicated reading time, the dedicated writing time, and then the math time, and we will have to, and you'll see in as we get further through the slideshow, that we're going to kind of rework how we provide tiered intervention as well. But that needs to happen somewhere. We have to give recess. We have to give lunch, obviously. So unless we extend the school day, which has all other kind of implications, this is what we're working with. So we're just putting the facts out there. We will give some options, and then really just get the discussion going so that we can continue this and see where we land, if anywhere.
Okay, so again, I wanted to divide this into 2 parts. I did want to check in with Mr. Asa, if you're still there, if you had any questions.
Nope, thank you. I am here and following along. No questions
Okay.
yet.
All right. So again, I hope the case has been made to all the board members that we've asked our teachers to do an impossible task. The solution is the next part. But so long as everyone accepts that point, then if we could get back to, and it might not be a bad idea to start all over again. Sorry, Dr. Zavachanzik.
No problem. Thank you. So we looked at several principles when designing our new school or our new schedule of what would be beneficial for staff and, of course, for students, and implementing the curriculums that we pass. So again, the first is the cycle and the rotation. As I said, we currently are on an A through F that rotates throughout the year at 6 days. Whether or not that would be better than a Monday through a Friday or an A through an E 5-day rotation. We looked at how core academics were distributed among ELA, math, and remember science and social studies currently rotate, which is what we would be saying as well. Intervention, which was the win period, which was brought up, the committee placed it within the core academics. So the ELA and math, which is where it would happen, it wouldn't be a separate block at a separate part of the day. It would be part of the actual lessons that we do, that the teachers do within their blocks. That would add some minutes to both, or at least the math. Specials, in order to make a schedule without cutting into the time before or after, it needs to be a consistent block, regardless of the cycle or the rotation, which would be 40 minutes, which is what most of them are now. So if you go beyond the 40, to Ms. Callahan's point, you do a 60, for example, for one of the specials. Whatever comes before or after that special does not happen. So if it's backed up to ELA, the teacher is stopping ELA 20 minutes prior. And if it backs up into science or social studies, they're not doing 20 minutes of science or social studies. And then, of course, sorry, do you want to? Okay. And then, of course, we have non-instructional time that hasn't always been accounted for that we want to place in. So, as you know, in a high school, for example, the bells ring, there's transitional time. An elementary day is really based on the schedule that teachers are given. So when they go from class to lunch or recess to class or class to special, or the morning meeting time or dismissal time, that takes time for students to line up to get to the place. If we don't build those times in, it's simply not happening. The ELA block gets shortened in order to get to specials, because as Ms. Callahan said, we don't ever reduce specials. So the teacher will be leaving earlier within their core academic block to get there.
One thing I will add, and can't stress this enough, there is not a one perfect schedule. Talking to my colleagues in Southern Fairfield County, from Greenwich all the way up to Monroe, there is not one schedule in any of our neighboring public schools that looks the same. There is some iteration of different lengths of time, whether that is tied to collective bargaining, whether it's considered a special. Some are not special, similar to what we do with Spanish. They do it for other things. Some don't offer what we offer. Some offer more of one thing, less of another. Some do a rotation where something will meet twice in one semester, once in another semester, and trade off with something else to try to give a balance. But there, from doing scheduling at both elementary, middle, and high school for the better part of my career, I can tell you, and I said this to the teachers last Tuesday when we talked to them to give them a preview of this, and when we talked to the committee, there is not one perfect schedule. So there is going to be some tug and some pull in different directions, but really we can't not prioritize social studies. We cannot not prioritize science, mathematics, and literacy. Especially, these are the foundations as we build toward middle and high school. And I can't stress enough that I think the committee did a real good job having some real difficult conversations. It's tough when you're with your colleagues and trying to advocate for your subject matter over someone else's. But again, I think we landed in a couple of different recommendations that will help give the students the best experience possible, as well as be able to stay within the confines of our collective bargaining as well.
If I could just add, because I didn't say it on the priorities, the cycle and the rotation, one of the other principles was grade level meeting time. And that's pretty much the professional learning community of the grades, first, second, third, fourth. So with a 5-day, we would need 6 specials in order to accomplish that. With a 6-day, we would need 7 specials in order to accomplish that.
Okay. So, and I think it's fair to say, as an acknowledgement of all of our specials and all of our curriculum, that we landed in the place that we are right now because Fairfield thinks they're all important. So I definitely appreciate how we got here. There's nothing we're doing that someone isn't ready and able to say very eloquently, this is important. But in looking over the list, because what basically this discussion I'm asking is for Ms. Bardenwerper, Ms. Flynn, and Mr. Krasnoff, whether you want to go back later and watch a replay or you're taking notes now. But this is just discussion as we ask questions, as we kind of discuss our own priorities. Because what I've spoken with Mr. Krasnoff about doing at the curriculum committee meeting for next week is to perhaps boil this down to a few recommendations. And again, it's not that you're a gatekeeper. You know, it's not serving as these are the only things, just as when we discuss in policy committee a policy. We'll do the work of wordsmithing, asking questions, bringing forth a recommendation, but then ultimately it's up to the full board. Scheduling is not something exactly that the board does not vote on schedules. However, I do think it's important that we give an endorsement. I haven't figured out what that motion would look like yet, so sorry, cart before the horse there. But I would like that the board is in a position to say, this is what we would be willing to endorse, because remember that ultimately, in next year's budget, it will ultimately become a budget cycle, a budget issue. What I very much want the discussion right now to not be about at all is budget. I want us making the decision or the recommendation and the endorsement for what we think is educationally best. And that other part is a factor that will come later. And it's not that it's not important, but not for our discussion. We're talking about the education piece here. Is it fair to say that of the 5 things that we would be weighing in on right now, Dr. Zavajancic, the one we don't need to weigh in on anymore probably is the 3rd bullet point, interventions? That was one thing the committee felt comfortably putting forward as a recommendation. The win period is gone. The intervention period will be folded into the slightly extended math and ELA time. Is that correct?
That is what the committee said, unless you guys feel otherwise.
Unless we feel otherwise, I'm going to take a little quick look around here, and I'm not seeing anybody who wants to jump on that one. So we can cross that bullet point off in terms of what we're asking our curriculum committee to look at. Regarding the cycle and the rotation, just wondering, is that something where staff felt more ready to make a recommendation? And again, we'll see what the, where the board has a discussion on that, but were you willing to, was that something you were more ready to come out with a recommendation for?
I mean, currently, the 6-day rotation in some ways works okay. But it is more predictable to schedule a building with a Monday through Friday schedule. And I think overwhelmingly, the committee felt that if we can get to a 5-day rotation, and I know there'll be discussions where it'll say, well, all the Mondays that we have off. I mean, there's 4 Mondays, for example, that are outside of, a break, the April break or the December break next year that we don't have school. Could we do a 5-day rotation where that doesn't get factored in so you don't miss whatever is on the Monday, those 4 days? We can absolutely do that. I think Dr. Zavajancic mentioned that. But a 5-day rotation makes it a lot more predictable to get itinerant staff on a day so that they have them there than rather on a letter.
Okay, so that would be if the board is going to argue against that, that needs to be very strongly done because we have a recommendation there. And in the core academics, I guess we don't need to talk about the time for those right now. What it is in a 5-day cycle, we're talking really about the specials and trying to give a sense of the 6, how that would function. Anything else that you especially need our feedback on?
No, it's really about the 5 or the 6. And if you agree with the 5, the 6 specials, what they are, how often they're going to meet. And in the 6, 7 specials, again. But we want to keep everything consistent so that it is a prep period for the teachers and it does allow for the teachers to have that critical grade level meeting time in the rotation.
Okay, I just have one last question, then I'm gonna open up to the board. Snack time. Because I really would not want to hear that they're trying to do curriculum while the kids are taking a break for snack.
It's within the transition block.
Okay,
So it's there.
so let me open it up to the board, Mr. Lee.
Just curious, and I'm sorry if I missed this part. What do the elementary school teachers think on your potential change or idea?
I don't know broadly. We haven't surveyed them, so I'm not sure how to answer that. The committee was made up, as Mr. Tessani said, of administrators, teacher liaisons of each department, and curriculum leaders.
Dr.
we-
Devcha, if I could jump in, because there was a Google Doc opened up after the presentation last Tuesday, correct?
Yes.
So that, although not a survey, it was an opportunity for some comments. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I have the comments and questions that are in there. Some advocated for the win period. There was, I think, a total of 21 comments within there. Some like that the win period was going away. I mean, there's an opinion on each of these principles that I put forward.
But only 21 folks chimed in out of 250 or
30.
so, maybe a little bit more teachers that were present and heard the presentation last Tuesday.
And in our experience in education, lack of comment, what does that generally correspond to? When comments are solicited, are invited, are you willing to say that one?
Well, I'm not sure what, it depends, I would say.
If there were negative feedback, do you think it would have been entered?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mrs. Flynn.
I'm on it. I was in doing research just for curriculum committee. I kind of went back and looked at block when we brought it for middle school, and I thought it was very helpful, like kind of whichever side of the dice you fell on, just hearing from staff. So I think in situations like this, even if we don't agree or disagree, I just feel like the insight would be helpful. Not necessarily that we're going to, how do I say this? I think we might catch some information there that could be helpful in terms of the specials. Like I would like to hear from staff, like what they're seeing. Like I feel like I would appreciate a little more feedback from staff, especially if they were all like, could we do some kind of maybe I know for a block it was like anonymous, like just a call. I don't know how any of that works. So through the chair to Mr. Testani, if you think that might be helpful for us or how you
Well, I
picture
think
it.
the classroom teachers are probably neutral because they're going to get their contractual prep period and they're going to get their grade level meeting time. I think where you're going to see some differences of opinion are until the specialists know what we're going to offer and how many times, those are the ones that are going to have the most say because they could be impacted in their particular content
Yeah.
area.
I absolutely understand. I think it just might be helpful to hear from classroom teachers, like on the day-to-day, what they're seeing, what's the struggle for that. Like, I don't know. I would find that helpful as a board member, but
Well, if I could just ask, the first part of the presentation was making the case that they've been given an impossible job.
absolutely. And I think I want to just make it easier to find out what they want to like. It's obviously impossible, but I would love their input on what we make reality. We have to make reality out of this impossible task. So I would love to hear from our teachers what they value and what they really want to see. I just think it would be helpful information, even if it is in like a larger chunk. Like I said, we might have completely contrasting opinions, but I think at this point, this is a rather large shift. And like I said, that was the model followed for the block schedules for the middle school. So while I'm looking for a way to kind of, I'm not prescriptive about the feedback or how we get it. I just think we need more before we make kind of this level of a shift. That's kind of my instinct.
Can I address your comment?
Absolutely.
The teachers I've spoken to, because I've been on the committee and I talk to my teachers all the time to get feedback so I could represent them on the committee. They feel very validated and very grateful that we are looking at this because it has been an issue with them for a long time. So the ones I talked to are actually really thankful and feel like finally you're seeing what we're seeing.
And that's my hope is to hear from them and their lived experience and kind of how trying to make this work is and just their thoughts. That's really, like I said, I'm not prescriptive about it.
Mr. Krasnov?
I'm going to keep it anonymous, but since your presentation on Tuesday, I heard from 3 different elementary school teachers who said they thought they were crazy because they kept saying they didn't have enough minutes in the day to teach everything they needed to teach, and that your presentation validated that. So anything we can do to help them get their minutes back, they would really appreciate it. So that's number one. Number two, question from the chair to Mr. Testani. Is there a way to maybe work with where we schedule like PD days to like even out? Because I looked at the schedule too. It's like Mondays, Fridays, and I think it was Thursdays have the most days off, and then Tuesdays and Wednesdays don't really have a bunch. Maybe we could do development days. I know midweek isn't typically when we always do them, but maybe that will even out the schedule a little better. So one day isn't getting.
Or that could be the days where there are field trip schedules or
Sure.
their assembly schedules would be more focused on Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Just so it even it out, and then it's less of a worry to try to, fix the Monday that they're missing their special more than another day or something like that. Or we can look at it more in the curriculum committee if we need to, but just food for thought while the whole board is something I was thinking about. Thanks.
Mrs. Bardenwerper.
Okay, so I have a few ideas that I think are probably good for curriculum committee, so I'm going to leave those. But I just wanted to be clear when we're talking about these lost minutes, it's not just lost minutes, it's lost objectives that are coming from the state, correct? Like, do the teachers feel that we are not actually teaching not just what we're asking them to teach, but what the state is asking of us?
Yes, so the standards and the content that go along with it do not get done.
Okay. Yeah, that I just think that's a really good clarification to make, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm not letting you off the hook, guys. The curriculum committee has to have some marching orders. They have to have some. So let me start with the 5 versus the 6. Does anybody object to the staff recommendation of the 5-day cycle? Mrs. Flynn?
I'll just say, I'm not sure yet. I think for me, I would have to see what it's gonna look. I think I have the advantage of being on the curriculum committee and having more opportunity to speak to it. So I'm not sure yet. I think from what I've heard, I heard similar feedback from some staff members. So I'm really excited to see it. I think for me personally, I would kind of I like hearing it from you guys. I like the educational recommendations. So to parse it out like that is a little bit difficult for me. But I think anecdotally, we've definitely heard that the 5-day is easier. I know the block on 5-day tends to work a touch better. So I'm intrigued by both. I know that's not helping.
Ms. Bardenwerper?
I just want to say the same thing. I want to see what it looks like, and I'm also would be interested in like creative ideas. Like one of my ideas would be like semesters. Like, could we switch the special order, midway through the year so that the Mondays and the Fridays don't affect the same special all year? And kind of looking into different ways that we can kind of make the 5-day block work if we're going to go in that direction. But I would really want to see how it's laid out and.
Yeah, I think what we need to know is which specials the board wants to maintain and how frequently they would like to see those specials meet. And then we can do something to massage it where you may not get the same special twice in the entire year, that we can go flip flop and say, all right, you'll get, and I'll use PE because I don't think people will get as crazy about PE right now. I'm just using it as an example. PE twice in the first semester, and then you'll have it once in the second semester, while somebody will have PE once in the first, and that'll be opposite. Another special that will go twice and once. So then it won't be something that gets reduced completely if it meets twice now the entire year. But it again, it has to come from somewhere or not. But especially in that transition year, the last year prior to going to middle school, I think it would help students to regain some of that instructional time prior to making that transition to middle school in 6th grade. And that's what we're hearing from our middle school teachers, that they're not coming with all the skills and the background knowledge and that they would like them to see.
And as an example, if we didn't do some kind of mixing, if it were just straight, what you have at September is what you have in June.
Correct.
Kindergarten, for example, right now has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 2 of them have to go. Again, that's if we did a September through June schedule and didn't try that kind of middle ground of massaging. But that's a decision where there needs to be some guidance on it, because I don't want staff to be in the position of making a suggestion and then the board doesn't back that. So that we are at that point the sounding board, for the community, and obviously anyone who has their certain interest is going to argue for that. And I respect that enormously, but it is also how we got in this position of simply asking something of our staff they cannot do. Ms. Barnworth, you still had the floor, and I actually just took it from you, so sorry about that.
No, no problem. I was just going to say, one of the things we did discuss in curriculum committee was STEAM and potentially embedding that into science and library media and trying to regain minutes there. And I just thought I would throw that out to the whole board since that was something that we did give a lot of time to.
Mr. Lee.
Do we lose personnel going from 6 to 5?
Okay, hold on one second. That's what we're not discussing. We're not discussing the personnel issue right now because we're going to make the educational decision. That's the best. This way, we're not doing. And actually, while it would have been helpful, maybe in some ways, if that ends up being a factor, I'm glad we didn't do it within the confines of the budget cycle, because then forever people would have them wedded in their brain. They just did that because of trying to save some money, and it absolutely is not. So I apologize for cutting that off,
No
but
problem.
we'll find that out on the other end if it's okay.
And just be reminded, play-based learning is not an option to get rid of. That is state
Good
mandate.
reminder.
So that has to stay for kindergarten.
And it's also not a special.
And it's not a
And it's
special.
not a special because it's not long enough for the teachers to get their prep period.
I put it on that sheet just because it didn't fit with the other ones.
Mr. Lee, you still have the floor?
I would like to see, I mean, I'm kind of like still in the middle, but I would like to see some kind of development in 5 from the curriculum committee, how you would work it all out in a day and get those, specifically those hours back that we're missing in those cores, because I think that's the important part, especially we're hearing it now from the middle school. They're not being as prepared as they should be.
Okay, Mr. Krasnov?
So one of the things I suggested we looked at was making all the specials pretty much equal, whether it was 40 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever it worked out to be. STEAM was getting folded into science in some way to make sure we still had the STEAM curriculum but embedded in the science curriculum, and go to the 5-day schedule. I just thought that was the cleanest, most equitable change we could make. But obviously we're open to any feedback anyone has. It was just spitballing on what was equitable to all the specials, so no one really gets.
Yeah, regardless 5 or 6, we were going to go with 40-minute specials across the board.
All right, so I have to say, hold on one second, Mrs. Flynn. I especially really want to hear from Mr. Lee, Mr. Asa, Ms. O'Neill, Ms. Rinaldi, and myself chiming in, because the curriculum committee members are going to have a lot of time, maybe even a second meeting to talk about this. But if
I'm
there's,
ready to
you're
chime in.
wondering, the only people who've suggested ideas right now are Mr. Krasnov and Ms. Bardenwerper. They need to hear from the rest of us. So, Ms. O'Neill, thank you.
This isn't exactly a suggestion. I actually have a question through the chair to Mr. Testani. When you were looking at those schedules from other districts in the area, were there ones that did a better job of getting these minutes in during the day? And would the curriculum committee and maybe the entire board be able to look at those as an example?
Yeah, I think the ones that worked the cleanest were the ones that didn't have as many specials as we do. So one district, for example, does not have any foreign language in the elementary school. One of our Southern Fairfield County colleagues, and they don't have STEAM. So they're able then to provide 45 minutes, and they did the swap off. They did a couple were 2 and then 1, 2 and 1. There are some that are much more complicated. Some library, for example, is not a special. Teachers have access to go down to the library and work with the librarian on a sign-up basis. I mean, there are so many iterations, and then whatever different contractual negotiations that they have with their bargaining unit as well factored in. But it was all over the place. I mean, there was not any consistency amongst any of the districts. And actually, a couple of my colleagues responded back, let me know where you land. We'd like to see it, because we are also struggling and are doing a review at some point, because it's not working for us either.
One quick question, only because I cannot remember. For the music in fifth grade, what is the focus of the 40 versus the 55-minute allocation? I know it's two completely different components
Yes.
of the curriculum.
The 55 minutes is chorus, where all three classes, or however many classes you have in fifth grade, sing together. And the other class is a normal special of general music that their individual class has with the music teacher.
Thank you. It's been a while for me, sorry. Ms. Flynn?
This is a follow-up for curriculum committee, not a question. Is there any way to start maybe keeping track of things that would trigger a curriculum vote to be needed? That mention of chorus, I can't remember is it included, like what is included in curriculum documents?
The time limits are not for music.
What?
The time limits are not for music,
Oh, okay.
if that's what you were asking.
I think so, yes.
Mr. Lee?
I'll throw this in the curriculum committee. If you stay to 6, can you adjust times to make everything fit? So like, like, don't they in kindergarten, every special is 40 minutes? So in reality, you may lose some time that way too, right? Can we adjust the timing for all these classes, maybe one set time throughout for 6? I don't know if
Well,
that's even.
that's what we're suggesting, that 40 minutes seem to be the most logical. Anything below 40 is not a prep for the teacher, so it wouldn't count. That's why Spanish, for example, is 30 minutes. Teacher doesn't get a prep there. Technically, I mean, they should be in the room, but obviously they can do other things, but we still have to give them a 40-minute prep that day, even though Spanish is 30 minutes on that same day. So that's what we were trying to explain before. It comes from something, because that's not the teacher prep for the day.
But we're talking about making Spanish now 40 minutes, correct?
If we choose to continue on, it would be a 40-minute special.
Okay, Ms. Bardenwerper?
Okay. Oh.
Is it okay? Yes, Mr. Asa?
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't want to butt in, but so just to answer your question for my feedback for the curriculum committee, I'm quite intrigued by Mr. Krasnoff's comments and kind of am lining up with his philosophy there. I definitely am interested in the 5-day schedule and getting more core curriculum in that time. As for the specials, I am also intrigued with if we are able to fold the contents and information from STEAM into existing periods without losing precious time for the other curriculum that we've approved, I would very much be in favor of looking into that and maintaining the other specials in that set time frame.
Thank you, Mr. Asa. Yes, Ms. Bardenwerper.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify regarding Spanish. Currently, that is not actually in the special block, correct?
It is not.
All right, well, I'll jump in. I also agree about the idea of the 5-day cycle. I think that makes a lot of sense. It may feel like we're squeezing in more if we go to 6 days, but now you're just, there are going to be fewer cycles in the year, so it's not quite the pickup. And I like the cleanness of it, and I think it's better for staff in that regard. This is, okay, this is going to, all right, you might be unhappy with me, Mr. Testani, for saying this, but this would have been the time to make the argument for, well, now let's make Spanish a special that goes down to K. This is the time to make that now. It could be that we decide let's take a look at that in a year or something. But now that it would be an official special, where do we want to put it? What would we expect as an academic gain in our middle school and high school? And if nothing, have that discussion. But I am intrigued at the thought of STEAM being folded into science. I'm also intrigued at the thought of library being folded into social studies, science, or ELA. I again, love the curriculum I love all the curricula that we have approved. But to me, that to embed that within some of those, at least, especially if we did that idea that you've said a few times now, Mr. Testani, of having something up to the semester and then a switch at the semester, it would seem to make sense to me that library is something that could be embedded within a few of the curriculum core curriculum subject areas. I think that the curriculum committee needs to have a discussion on, because obviously I think it could be an age appropriate issue. Maybe, and this would, maybe to Mrs. Flynn's point that, if we heard from a classroom teacher who said, my kindergartners need 2 phys ed classes a cycle. I think that might be a very legitimate academic argument to make for the, for the validity of the rest of, or the usefulness of the rest of their academic time. Whereas a 4th or 5th grade teacher might say, oh, a lot of our kids are involved in parks and rec sports or other sports. They don't need that same emphasis on phys ed. It's not to undercut phys ed, but that they're getting their needs met elsewhere. Not sure how we're going to get the general ed teacher to go out on the limb and say that, but that to me would be an interesting argument. See. So I guess that's, again, interesting idea about Spanish that I'd heard somebody say. I like STEAM getting folded in. Music is another one, depending on what they're doing. I look at that as the possible trade-off, maybe the, again, kindergarten or 1st grade teachers might say they really need more of the hands-on time in art as opposed to 2 in music, but they've got to have the 2 phys ed. That kind of feedback, I agree, might be useful, but I think it needs to be very targeted questions that the curriculum committee comes up with. I would not want to put a general ed teacher on the hook by just saying, what do you think your kids need? I think some of these might, if you come up with a few or a few schedules of your own and say, run that past staff as opposed to just get their general feedback, I think that might get you something more useful to have as a discussion going forward. Mrs. Flynn.
Just because I think this might be helpful, when you mentioned the older grades, Ms. Maxon Kennelly, that popped in my head, where band and orchestra lessons pop in for our 4th and 5th graders. Just to see where that kind of land. I know it's different at every building, but where they kind of land might be helpful too. That just popped into my head when we were talking about chorus.
Okay, Mr. Krasnoff.
Thank you, and maybe you listened to our meeting because everything you mentioned we did bring up in our meeting.
Oh.
We thought those were all great ideas.
I didn't get to that yet. I was going to.
Whether the 3-5 maybe only needs 1 PE and give the extra one maybe to the K2. Those were things we were throwing out. So if anyone has any feedback on any of those ideas that have been shared, that's kind of the info we would love. They all seem like great ideas. And we don't necessarily need to do all of them, but yeah, maybe K2 Spanish is something. That's one thing we did not talk about.
Well, in committee, we did talk about that if we were going to make Spanish a special, that it would make sense to drop it down to kindergarten. Because it just makes sense to do that. If we're going to make it a 40-minute special, that we would start it in kindergarten. This way they would get exposed to it earlier and have it throughout their elementary years prior to going into middle school. And then some of the trade-off could be with the PE 2 in 1, 1 in 2 with something else. But again, you also have what you mentioned about folding in. There is no approved STEAM curriculum. You guys have been offering it now for about 9 years and never approved the curriculum. With science going to be next on as the next big one for their review cycle. The 1 or 2 units that STEAM kind of does now with science and computer science, we can fold that into the new science review. And also we talked about putting that possibly if you decide into the library media specialists curriculum to fold it back into there this way. The rest of it, again, you never approved anything in STEAM.
The invention convention, does that come out of STEAM time?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think but when I think of folding it in, because obviously I have to acknowledge the point about never approving a curriculum or not, I think that's where it's especially the hands-on time. I consider that like the elementary school lab time. So, if we knew that that was happening, and of course we're about to see a science curriculum, I think that would make people feel really good about that going forward, because obviously the active learning in our core classes and in these specials is critical for this age group. Ms. O'Neill?
I had a question and then I will make a couple of comments about each one of these. Is there a state mandate about physical education classes in elementary school?
not a state mandate, no.
Okay, okay. Then I will just say I would love to see Spanish start in kindergarten. I think that would be wonderful. I also agree with what was just discussed about STEAM, that if it was to be folded in, I think the most valuable part of it, especially in elementary school, is the hands-on learning. Just when I hear my children and their friends, that's what they really get excited about. We're going to build a roller coaster. And I think that is so extremely valuable in science classes. The one thing I want to say about library is I would be very upset and sad to see library time go. I think the shift we have made and the entire state has made in the science to read and with our ELA curriculum is so important and necessary. But I think we need that piece that helps kids love reading, and that really happens during that library period where they really feel they have ownership of what they're reading, and the librarian comes in and shows them books. I would be sad to see the library time go.
Any others? Mr. Lee, anything? Ms. Rinaldi, anything? Okay, needless to say, as you sit and percolate and as you get letters and as things occur to you, you can always forward ideas that you'd like the curriculum. I would ask that you please send them directly to Mr. Krasnov. Mr. Krasnov, you can have it as part of the packet that goes out to the committee, and therefore that's also public documents so people can see the input that you're getting. I don't think the others of us non-curriculum committee members should kid ourselves. We have put quite a task on them. So you go and bring it back when you can. Is there a timeline that staff needs? Just so that the full board understands what the curriculum committee, the time constraints the curriculum committee is working under.
We generally plan the next year in May.
Okay. Mr. Krasnov.
But our next meeting is Wednesday, so if there's next Wednesday. So if there's any way you guys can get at least some starting comments, just to give us a place to start. We don't have to necessarily finish on Wednesday. Yeah, the 18th. If we can, that would be amazing. But if we can't, we understand. This is a big, heavy lift. Mr. Asa, hopefully here too by the 18th. Thank you.
And actually, I apologize. I have one more follow-up because to Ms. O'Neill's point, I brought up the Spanish down to K because obviously we've often heard about that being an intriguing point. But I would have to add an academic expectation that this impacts middle school and if not impacting high school, because if we're going to put that time into Spanish, which again, very clearly means we are taking it away from something else. I don't want it to be a nice, maybe being a nice to have is what we want, just that they're getting exposure. But if it's not moving the needle at all, and therefore they're not getting another block of art or of music, I would want to throw that out there that if it came back with a recommendation, I would want to know that there was a planned staff conversation on what is going to be I hate to put it that way, but academically accomplished, or was it decided that that wasn't an important factor and we want it just to have a cultural discussion? I don't really know, but I just would want that to be very thoughtfully done if we decide to do that. Not that I'm not intrigued by it. Okay, nothing else. So again, at this point going forward, all comments please to Mr. Krasnov. And Mr. Krasnov, you and I can be in touch regarding when this is ready to come back to us. Woo! All right, thank you so much all. Thank you for the discussion. We'll now move on to item 6A, which is the consent calendar. Looking to approve the sets of minutes for January 6th and January 13th, 2026. May I have a motion? Mr. Lee, seconded by Mrs. Flynn. Any comments? Seeing none. Oh, Mr. Asa, comment? Nope. Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to old business, item 7A, approval of math curriculum and textbooks as presented on January 27th, 2026. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the math curriculum and textbook as presented on January 27th, 2026. Moved by Mrs. Bardenwerper, seconded by Mr. Lee. Questions from the board? Mrs. Flynn.
I think through the chair, through the superintendent to Dr. Zavachansik, I don't know, did I lose him right? I'm sorry. You went all the way to the back. This is just a quick question and I think more of a statement at the end of it. So I had the pleasure of being a part of incoming high school for the first time, and myself along with a lot of other parents, the echoes were, it's a lot of courses. So I think my overarching statement would just be like, if as you're rolling this out, you're seeing issues, to come to the board. I think kind of we've discussed this in curriculum committee, but these cycles are really, really long. And especially for these larger academic core areas like math and ELA and science, as they're coming to us, I would just say if there's an issue as this is rolling out, please reach out to the chair or the curriculum committee as you're seeing enrollment coming in. I know, like I said, there's a lot of new courses. I was just going back and researching how Foundations of Algebra came to be, and there was a lot of lobbying for that course. So I think in my head, I fully supported the presentation. I continue to support the new courses. Kind of maybe you can just speak to like how you see this rolling out and like that next portion of it, or like how it is rolling out. Are you already seeing like teacher recommendations for the new courses? Like how are you kind of doing that?
We don't have that data yet. The presentations just happened at the high school. So once it comes in, we'll find out how the 3 new classes are enrolled, which is the 2 accelerated and extended algebra 1, which is really in lieu of foundation. So although new, it had a population before, at least in one building, and we will look at that as that comes in.
So maybe just to, through the chair to Mr. Krasnoff, maybe like an update on this later in the year, or early in the fall, to just kind of see how it's going. Not that it has to come to the full board, but I think math has been kind of an area where we've all been focused, and maybe just getting that update would be just a thought.
And with the 2 new accelerated courses for students, this will eliminate kids going to outside programs over the summer to try to skip a course and accelerate. So I'm sure there's going to be interest there, as well as the kids that are doubling up on math courses. This will be in lieu of that. The other thing that we had the conversation with the high school principals about is that parents that will override a teacher recommendation will have a form where parents will be able to do that. They'll fill it out with the understanding that there'll be a last day sometime in September to drop the course, with no guarantee that there'll be a course offered at the same time for that child to go into. So it could impact their other scheduled courses as well in terms of who the teachers are. So if a parent does waive the teacher recommendation and want their child in that course, after that drop dead date, the student will stay in the course for the remainder of the school year. That was something that was important to the administration at the buildings, that we weren't having kids going in and out of courses in November and December because they were maybe getting a B and they're used to getting an A, for example.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Krasnoff.
Just one quick comment from the chair to Mr. Destani and Mr. Zavajancic. I know we cut the math helpers. If this new curriculum, when it's rolled out, we see we need them back, could that be something that could be added in the high schools? Didn't we cut the math?
The math coaches.
Coaches, yeah.
Yeah, they were only 2 years in, those folks. They didn't exist prior. So, I mean,
Could we need them because of this or no?
So we're looking
very
at, and
comfortable?
we're working with Dr. Churls about a different type of coaching model that would benefit all the way through kindergarten on up. So that's something that we're going to develop, an actual coaching model with coaching cycles where that doesn't currently exist.
Excellent. It was just more common if you need it. Like I'd rather you come to us needing something, even though we cut it. That's always been my philosophy. If there's something that was missed when we roll something new out, I would love to hear it. I'm sure other board members may feel the same. All right, thank you.
Other questions? Well, first, I just wanted to say thank you for the answers to the questions. I have to ask out of curiosity, how long did that take?
The 2, excuse me. The 2 of us worked on that for 2 full days.
tremendous. Thank you very much. At the very least, I hope that everyone comes away with a better understanding of, and I would argue the importance of the teacher recommendation. And to Mr. Testani's point that that it's thoughtfully done, and no student is held to a track, no student is mandated to follow that, but that they're thoughtfully done by our staff members who know the children best in the classroom in a lot of ways. So very much appreciate your time. I just had one question, and I was just wondering, in terms of the foundations being changed to the extended, I was wondering what the shortcomings were that you observed in the foundations that led to the creation of the new course.
Sure. When I was looking at the foundations course, currently the curriculum is a 1 credit class. And it started off with not on grade level. It started off below grade level. And so
Well, it started with pre-algebra, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, or below, which if that's what the students need, it's fine. What I wanted to do was build a course that was 1.5 credits, so built in time that was in a board approved curriculum. So students would get that extended time in order to address those pre-algebraic skills that they may need. Our current curriculum document is 1 credit, 1 period, and so it doesn't really allow for that extra time the students may need to get that background knowledge while also then being able to access the grade level material.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Before we take this to a vote out to the public, does anybody have any comments regarding the vote? Hold on, I'll put my agenda aside. Regarding the math curriculum and textbooks. All right, then coming back to the board, any final comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing about this in the fall. Moving on to agenda item B, approval to delete policy 4146. The recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the deletion of policy 4146, 4246, employee accommodations, use of workplace facilities, property, and resources. Moved by Ms. Rinaldi and seconded by Ms. Flynn. My reminder to the board that this is one of our 2004 policies that we have been holding on to until we were prepared to vote on the community use and facilities, because we wanted to be sure that we held on to that language and brought it in. Are there any questions regarding the deletion? I didn't receive any questions, but anything? Seeing none, going out to the public, any questions on the vote to delete policy 4146? Seeing none, back to the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and the vote is unanimous. Thank you. No, board, I'm going to ask that we, respectfully request that we postpone item C, recommended motion regarding reading language arts. Our absent board member is not able to be here, so I'd like to postpone this to the March meeting so that she has time to speak to her amendment. Regardless of what happens with it, I would like to show her that courtesy. All in favor of motion to postpone? It's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to item D, approval of policy 3515, community use of school facilities. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve policy 3515, community use of facilities. Moved by Mrs. Flynn, seconded by Mr. Lee. Questions from the board?
I do.
Mr. Asa.
Yes, I had submitted a simple amendment to this ahead of time that went out in the Friday packet, so everybody should have been able to see it. So at this time, I would like to make a motion to have that minor language change. Would you be okay with me moving forward?
So go ahead and make the motion.
Yep, motion to amend the proposed language in policy 3515, page B, red language to strike central office administration and replace it with the superintendent or his/her designee on an annual basis.
Okay. Oops. Seconded by Mrs. Bardenwerper. Mr. Asa, do you want to speak to it any further?
No, I provided my rationale in the Friday packet. I just, basically trying to make it more clear to who the staff member or designee would be, and that knowing that the associated administrative regulations do talk to this, that they be updated in real time, so that if there ever is a change in the person that you're supposed to go to, that is easily accessible in the regs.
Okay, and this was brought up at the last meeting. Are there any questions? So first, out to the public, any public comment on the amendment and the amendment only? Okay, coming back, if you have a comment on the amendment. So I'm going to suggest that you wait for the next part. Okay, all right, so a vote on for the amendment and the amendment only. All those in favor?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. So now back to the main motion, which is regarding the approval of the policy 3515, community use of facilities as amended. Any questions, comments from the board? Mrs. Flynn?
Only because I've been sitting with this policy for, I think, 7 years,
a while.
a very long time. Just through the chair to Mr. Tassani, do you have any concerns with the language of this policy? Do you have any concerns with where we are with this work? And if so, do you need anything different?
No, it seems to be working fine.
Thank you.
Any other board members? One thing I will say that I very much appreciated on page C was that additional red language. This was something we batted around in policy for quite a while, that people know this, they can find this language in the regs, and that you decided to just put it here very simply up in the policy in terms of that any resident organizations or nonprofits that believe the fees will affect their ability to offer programming, to put it in there explicitly, I thought was very helpful. So thank you for that. Any other board questions? Out to the public, any public comment on the policy? Please note that you're not allowed to speak to the same thing twice. So all I would ask is that your comments be new, because obviously you have come up to speak to this policy already. Okay. No censoring, just amending. Name and address, please. Thank you. Is the green button on?
I can't hear.
How about that?
Good.
Mr. Asa, is that better?
Yeah, we can hear it online now.
Okay, great. So I think this is new in the sense that I don't think your amendments have covered this. The concern, again, that I have is that as you toggle through the definitional terms here, which do not appear to have been adjusted yet, FCCC, for example, is beyond a shadow of a doubt a nonprofit organization. It's a 501c3. Okay. You go through the definitions, you hit nonprofits at definition F. Definition G is resident organization. We frankly are that as well. But then you hit H. And the way H is written right now, any organization with participants who are not residents of the town of Fairfield, right, those get classified as out of town. So even though FCCC has anywhere between 250 to 300 kids, the vast majority of which are Fairfield, and we dip below, perfect purity of Fairfield because we have, for example, Bridgeport kids on scholarship. We then drop down and we are not classified as a nonprofit anymore for scheduling priority. We drop down to out-of-town organizations. It's then unclear to me what happens because there are other provisions. For example, the amendment that you just passed that talk about any resident or nonprofit organizations. Are we now not that as well? Where we can then not petition for reductions in fees. There's another bit of language that's above that, right above that. All efforts will be made to give adequate notice to organizations. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's the one above that. With the understanding that rental fees are likely to be passed on to participants. That's us, for sure. That's me, literally me. The board will make every effort to support a rental classification and rate structure that limits charges to Fairfield nonprofit youth organizations. We are in Fairfield. We've been in Fairfield for 30 years. 250 out of 300 members at one time or another are Fairfield kids, right? My daughter is in this. We are nonprofit, 501c3. We are youth. It's a children's choir. So are we in this mode here where the board is supposed to affirmatively try to limit charges to us? Or are we down in the resident organization and nonprofit where we have to ask and hope for it? Are we not any of those things because we have one Bridgeport kid on scholarship and now we're an out of town organization all of a sudden? And then do we face the Sophie's choice of saying, well, sorry, Bridgeport kids, it's been enriching for you and for us. But if you don't go, we're getting hit with 10,000 and up that we can't afford in a year where we're 80,000 in the hole.
Okay, I just wanted to let you finish that sentence. Okay, so that is your 3 minutes.
Yep.
So thank you so much. And I would argue that did fit as a new comment because you were very targeted in your language discussion this time, and that was helpful. Thank you so much, sir. Board members, Mr. Lee.
So I have a quick question going off of that. The YMCA in town, don't they rent summer, equipment, right? Summer locations. They're a nonprofit. They would still say a nonprofit even if some of their kids don't live in Fairfield, right? Wouldn't they still fall in as a nonprofit organization?
You're asking me?
Yeah, or Mr. Tastani or,
Yeah.
so in this case, they're still
We
considered a
try to
nonprofit.
work with every organization that reaches out with a hardship. So happy to have that conversation at any time. And we do everything we can to make sure that we can help out. I don't know if we're going to be able to help out with an $80,000 deficit for the children's choir, but we're more than willing to sit down and have a conversation about what we can do.
Right, thank you.
Hey, Mr. Krasnoff.
I don't want to speak for Mr. Asa, but I believe that was kind of what your amendment was about, that if people did have questions, they know exactly where to go versus the ether, which kind of was the old, correct?
Well, my amendment was to the employees that are using the school facilities in the red language on page B. But being involved in this policy and the creation when I was on the policy committee and prior to that on the facilities committee years back, I think this policy as written outlines everything very well. And as Mr. Testani said, that organizations are absolutely and have absolutely been able to come to him and Mr. Papa George to try and negotiate a reduced rate. It does happen, and especially for organizations that use our facilities regularly. So I don't see how this policy would change that.
Thank you.
I'd actually like to sound this out before I make it as a motion, Mr. Testani, but because we were trying to make the improvement to make this completely transparent and very clear for members of the public who are looking at this policy, and this took a long time. If you look on page C, I don't know if you have it in front of you. What would you think of that first line being any organization? So striking resident, striking nonprofit, and just leaving it to the superintendent to address the needs of any particular group as
I think in this case, it is a nonprofit.
what I appreciate is that we very carefully defined
just-
them on the previous page.
Yeah.
And so the idea of nonprofit, Fairfield, out of town, we very carefully defined them, and this is
Yeah.
capitalized, so therefore it's referring to the defined term.
Yeah, that's fine. I just think that people, organizations that are for profit cannot expect that they're going to be able to lobby for a discounted rate. I think a longstanding organization like the Children's Choir, because we did have a lot of conversations, I know, in policy about they may use a address in Fairfield, but they're really not a Fairfield. But we are certain that this has been a longstanding organization. So that's fine. Any organization could be the language with the understanding that for profits, and there are a lot of them out there, especially in the athletics world, will not be given any consideration for a reduction.
Or they can reach out to you, but they're
Right.
and that's what the point being for me personally, that I'm fine with leaving this to your discretion.
Because the
But-
AAU programs are always looking for field space. We have limited field space, but if we do have the opportunity, they are for profits. And we'll pay a for-profit rate regardless.
And also, I'm not looking to make the motion to change the priority list. That's a different matter. So
Madam
therefore,
Chair,
yes, Mr. Asa.
May I just have a follow-up to that? I would not support amending that red language. I believe the way as written, is accurately reflects the past practice and the process going forward, to Mr. Testani's points of what he just made. And the commenter of Fairfield County Children's Choir stating that they are an official 501c3. I think they would be covered under here, and I think it would be, I don't think it would be a good idea, in my personal opinion as one board member, to make that edit at the table right now.
If people are comfortable, it was just a thought, because again, I know we did go to pains to define the terms.
Yes, and I think this lines up with the pains that were gone through. I
Yes.
think you guys hit the nail on the head. Many of us have been involved in this along the way, but I think you guys got it right this time.
All right, so I guess I will fall back. I'm fine with moving forward with this policy as is, but what I think I would just ask Mr. Testani is any issues with this, and it turns out that we would be better served, and to Mr. Papa George, that we would be better served by different language. I'm happy to bring this right back up again in the fall and amend that language, because I think the intent of the board with a vote moving this forward is very clear, in terms of, obviously, we have costs to recoup. You know, we've just had an extensive budget discussion, and one of our topics was custodial overtime. You know, that just offering everything, we can't offer things for free. We have costs that we are responsible for covering. But again, as Mr. Testani said, there are organizations that need to owe their fair share, and there are others that we would like to give you the latitude to work with. Okay. So then coming back to, we've already gone out to the public, back to the board then, voting on, hold on, pardon me. Recommended motion again that the Board of Education approve policy 3515, community use of school facilities as amended. Those in favor?
Aye.
And it is unanimous. Thank you very much. Next, recommended motion that the Board of Education approve policy 5118, resident, non-resident school attendance in the Fairfield Public Schools, moved by Mr. Lee, seconded by Mrs. O'Neill. Mr. Asa?
Yes. I had submitted a minor amendment on this one as well. It was in the Friday packet. I will make a motion to amend the proposed language in policy 5118, page D, second paragraph, last sentence, to add, quote, as stated in the administrative regulations, end quote, after the word deductions.
I did that again. Sorry, a second to that? Mr. Krasnov. Mr. Asa, any discussion?
Yeah, and I brought up some questions about this in the last meeting, regarding it being an annual payment, and there potentially being confusion about the payroll deductions versus annual payment. And it was explained that it is done through payroll deductions throughout the year, and that is also explained in the administrative regs. Therefore, I am making this motion. So it is clear in the policy where people can find that.
So thank you for that. And again, I'm not always in favor of putting that in, because otherwise we could be repeating in every single policy as stated in the administrative regulations. But I do agree with Mr. Asa that in this case, that might be a particularly helpful piece of information. Any board questions or comments? If I can accept one friendly amendment, Ms. Brown, the previous line, I'm not even doing this amendment, just an annual. We changed it to annual and didn't make it an on the line above. Sorry, that's been bothering me for 2 weeks. Do you see that above where it says paid via, and above the word via, it should have been an, and we didn't do that in policy. Okay, any other questions? Out to the public, any questions on this policy? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. First, we have to make a vote on the amendment. Are there any comments from the public on the amendment? Seeing none, coming back to the board, all those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right, now back to the main motion, the approval of the policy 118, sorry, as amended. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, out to the public. Any questions on this policy? Seeing none, back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. On to policy F, motion, agenda item F, recommended motion that the Board of Education approve policy 6144, controversial issues. Moved by Mr. Lee, seconded by Ms. Rinaldi. Discussion. Mr. Krasnoff.
I still have some issues with the policy just because of the definition of what a controversial issue is. As I stated in the previous meeting, it's way too open for interpretation, and unless we set, in my mind, a better guideline of what a controversial issue is and how we handle it, at this point, I'm not going to support this one.
All right, I will ask Mr. Krasnoff, because at the last meeting, if you remember, I had asked, because I don't want this going back to policy again. So either we need to revert to the original language, which was a single vague paragraph. And again, I think all of us felt who worked on this, this was not a hill anyone was looking to die on. Our superintendent has spoken to the fact that we could in fact delete, this is not a mandated policy, we could delete it entirely. We could go back to the general language, which was far more vague than this, or if there was something in here to be fixed, we had requested any amendment language. So if the definition is not made more clear, you simply are saying that you would like to revert to the language in black. Is that your motion?
I make a motion to delete the policy on the table.
Okay, seconded. Anyone with a second? Mr. Lee. All right, Mr. Krasnoff, if you could make your argument.
I just feel we have issues defining what controversial issues are, and setting a policy about controversial issues to me is not something I think we should do.
Okay, Mr. Lee, any follow-up?
If we delete this, there's nothing on the books about what even potentially a controversial issue is, correct? There is no language whatsoever.
That is correct. So then it leaves it up to administrative purview. Okay, Mrs. Flynn.
I appreciate the motion, Mr. Krasnoff. I'm having similar struggles. I think that as a board, I would like to see us be more proactive in this moment instead of just constantly waiting or deleting or being reactive in situations. I think that we as a body have to kind of look at the feedback that is given to us. And while I fully appreciate that, the last time this came before us, you didn't hear these concerns. I would feel myself personally a little bit negligent to not bring those to the table right now. And for myself, I actually won't be supporting the motion to delete. I really think it's imperative for this to go back to the policy committee and for that work to get done. And I don't say that to be trite. I don't say that to ignore the work of our committee, but I think the two we had two new board members. We had, I watched community use of facilities. As I said, I started as a parent representative in that room 7 years ago and watched the evolvement of that. And I think what we passed today, while I don't find it to be perfect, I think is a really good representation of the feedback that we got from our community and the work of a lot of stakeholders. So I would really like to see that consistency in this policy. So I don't think that it does anything to undermine the work. I actually think it really gives some trust to our process and our board if we, in good faith, look at this policy one more time. And if the policy committee at that point thinks it's ready for us again, then that is where we are. But I think at this point, I won't be supporting the motion only because I really think that work is very important.
Mr. Krasnoff.
I would like to explain the motion a little more. So the reason I want to delete it is I actually think that it's more a procedure and a security thing than the actual controversial. So I'd rather actually see it in a completely separate policy in a different way. So for me, I would like to delete this policy.
Any other board members? Mr. Lee.
Whether it's deleted or gets back to policy, it goes back to the old language.
No, if it's deleted, it's
I mean, no,
gone
if it goes back to the policy, we're still then going on what the old language is
for the time
for
being,
the
yes.
time being. My concern from the get-go, I agree on what you're saying, what's considered controversy, but I think if you put 9 people, 10 people in a room, you get 10 different results, right? And I think that's one of these topics that, you know, this year, it may be everyone's on board, but then next year, it's a total different story, right? I don't know if there's an answer, and I see your point on why you would take it out, but not having something there, I think it's not. There's bad language before. This is a lot better. And if it goes back to policy, we go back to that bad language that we don't like. If we approve it, at least we can keep working on it and then come back maybe and say, hey, we maybe need to add this, maybe we should do this. It's not technically set in stone, right? We can ask policy to do it again. No? At least we need to have something.
Okay. Mrs. Flynn?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Can't this draft be brought back to policy and you just begin from there and review it just in hindsight of public and board feedback?
Yeah, I think what Mr. Lee's point would be is that if that happens, we do have an existing policy, so we're not operating with nothing while the fixing is
But
going on.
Can I interrupt that we handle the amendment that's on the table first? Because we can't be talking about bringing it back to the policy if we're deleting it. So can we handle the
Fair
amendment?
point. Thank you, Mr. Asa. So staying focused on, yeah, because yes, that could be next steps. So staying focused on the idea to delete the policy entirely. Any other board feedback? Going out to the public, excuse me, Mrs. Barnwerper.
I would not support deleting the policy. I think that it is better to have something, even if it is imperfect and needs work. And while I do agree with procedure and security potentially being additional policies or something else to look at, I think right now in this moment, having something on our books about controversial issues is just important. And I agree. I think that we would all have very different definitions, and I don't know how necessarily you combat that, but I think we need to try. So I do not support deletion. Thank you.
Excuse me, Ms. O'Neill.
I would not support deletion either because I do think there needs to be something on the books, but I think of in light of the feedback we have gotten in the last few weeks, I speaking as someone on the policy committee, I'm looking at this through a different lens and through different circumstances, and I think it should go back to policy committee.
Mr. Krasnov.
I would have no problem supporting it going back to policy. My concern is the way it's written now, it will hold people accountable for whatever their opinion is. And the way it's written, that's why I want to delete it. But everyone can do what they want.
Okay, going out to the public, anyone who would like to speak to the amendment and the amendment only, and that amendment is for the deletion of the policy. Seeing none, back to the board. All those in favor? Mr. Krasnov, all those opposed? Mrs. Bardenwerper, Mrs. Flynn, Mrs. Maxim Canelli, Mr. Asa, Ms. Rinaldi, Ms. O'Neill, and abstentions. Mr. Lee, motion fails. So back to the main motion regarding the text for controversial issues. Mr. Asa.
Yeah, a couple things. One, I'm a little disturbed, quite honestly, that we've had 2 weeks and no one has brought forward, as asked, suggested language or changes, and now is saying to throw it back to the policy committee who has done the work. The Board of Education does not and should not be involved with the day-to-day operations of the district. The Board of Education can use policy to set what we believe are procedures and whatnot, which is what we're doing here. I think we would be doing a disservice to not pass this policy tonight and simply say, we want it to go back to policy. There has been time for this and no one has come with the language as requested. So I would say, obviously I am going to support this policy tonight, but I would say that those of you saying that it's going to go back to policy, including policy committee members who sent this out, simply because of an event, really need to look at what you're looking to change, and does that go beyond the scope of the Board of Education, and does it get into the weeds of micromanaging the district, which is what we should not be doing.
Thank you, Mr. Asa. Other comments from board members? Mrs. Flynn?
I just want to speak to kind of the intent when I say that. I think that Mr. Asa, I very much appreciate that we try and get amendments in and information. I think that while I don't really see it as reacting to the event, I see it as reacting to feedback that we could do better and that we could add some scaffolding. And did we look at it from every angle? So I like, you know, I was told that if I was like the smartest person in the room I was in, I was probably in the wrong room. So like you want to always be looking at like your blind spots and your, so like if we aren't taking a moment to reflect, like I said, it could go back to policy and come back to us exactly the same. I'm not being, once again, prescriptive about the work. I'm just saying like, is this a moment for us to reflect? That was my point.
Okay, I would only say that you were asked to be prescriptive about the work. That this has come out of policy committee twice. And I'm not trying to influence a vote, but the event in question you're referencing was 2 weeks ago. And this had until for the Friday packet to submit amended language, and we got nothing. And we are being asked to bring it back to policy with no further direction from this board. And that's what happened last time, and that is what happened twice with reading. And this board has a job to do. And if you fail to do your job, you are then dumping extra work on other board members who aren't going to know what to do with it. I don't, for a sec, obviously the policy committee will do its best, but we have received no direction, and that direction was supposed to have come in the form of amendments, and no one did that. And to just take the easy way out and say, policy committee, you do it, is unfair. I did not ask the curriculum committee to do that. I asked this board and I called you out by name. Give them feedback. It is not fair to ask them to do that work with no direction. And we all chimed in. You have given us no feedback. And I having gone another round with this policy after having had it for months in policy, and then I explicitly requested 2 weeks ago for amendments, I won't kid you, it feels a little disrespectful, is what it feels like. Mr. Krasnoff.
I would like to ask that possibly a separate policy is looked at with procedures and safety and security when dealing with controversial issues. Like this defines what a controversial issue and how you deal with it, but not the procedures or security measures or any of that taken. We don't have any policy dictating how that works. So I know it maybe is not a normal ask, but I would ask you at least have a discussion, please, about that.
Again, I don't know what that means. And I say that from, obviously I understand your words, but policy language isn't about just that. We received no amendment language.
Well, and I can't add it to this policy. I don't think it belongs in this policy, which is why.
Do you think it belongs in regs for this policy?
It could belong in regs, or it could be a separate policy under safety and security. I don't know where it belongs per se, but it doesn't belong in this policy, which is actually why I wanted to delete this policy.
So are you saying then you would be in favor of the policy, recognizing that what you view, I'm genuine, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I want to understand you. That you're in favor of the policy, but the issue that you still want to address needs to find a home.
Possibly. I would vote in favor of this if the other stuff had a home. I have a problem putting the cart before the horse in this one. Because if we don't have a definition of what we do on a controversial issue, then why are we passing something about controversial issues that I could sit here and name 10 things that I think are controversial, and half the people here will say, that's not controversial. I can name something from the Super Bowl that could have been controversial. It doesn't mean we all agree what part of it was controversial. There's too many current events now, and I'm sure it's only going to get worse as we go forward, that it's really concerning, especially for teachers, to hold them accountable for what a controversial issue is. Because,
well, keep in mind, teachers are supposed to stick to the curriculum.
Of course they are.
So if it's introduced through the curriculum, this gives them their direction.
But they're still going to talk about current events and social studies.
As they should.
And they're going to try to show both points of views, but at some point they could stumble into something that's controversial. I have concerns. That's why I wanted to delete it without any other safeguards. I respect the policy committee, what you guys were trying to do. I just wanted to get that out there.
No,
Thank you.
I hear you, because that was absolutely something we wrestled with. Again, if you look on our agendas, we hit this many times before Ms. O'Neill and Ms. Bartermore were pulled in on it on the round 2. And one of the things we deliberately took out were examples of, because the moment you try to get into examples, they're limited by and the next day. So we just tried to come up with the language that you see before you. Ms. Bartermore?
One thing I just wanted to bring back up that was discussed, I believe, in the last meeting was that we had FVA support for this policy.
Yes.
correct? The teachers union approved it and saw it more as a protection for the teachers rather than holding them accountable. And I know that feedback at the time did mean a lot, that the teachers liked the idea of having this policy. And I know that that is still something that is guiding me, as we discuss this further. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. O'Neill, I think you had your hand up. Yes.
Yeah, I think what we really need to bring up here is that since we had this meeting, and I don't remember the date, January 27th, there are things that have happened on a national level that I think go to what Mr. Krasnoff was bringing up about safety and security. And to me, that is really important, that it is either added here or it is added somewhere. And I just think it needs to go back and be discussed.
Okay. Mr. Lee.
My problem is this. Look, I think we all agree it's always going to be changing, right? But this policy is replacing even more vague wording, vocabulary. If this policy goes back to policy committee, we may never agree, right? It's going to have to come back sometime. But in the meantime, you have an old, outdated policy that's very, very vague, right? At least there are some set guidelines. At least the teachers union is behind it. No one's saying we can't tweak it, right? If we need to, right? And I'm assuming we will, and we can add things. But I think this for right now is the temporary, if you want to call it temporary fix or permanent fix or whatever, but it is a fix and it is better than what's in there.
Okay, Mrs. Bottomorper?
I agree with Mr. Lee, and I just wanted to say that I would support looking into an additional policy or regs or somehow addressing the security, because that is very important. And I do agree that that could be addressed, but I think that for right now, as Mr. Lee said, this fix is better than no fix. So thank you.
Mr. Krasnoff?
So I will support this policy if, as a committee, you guys agree to look at procedures and safety and security. I would.
Now that we're talking like that, can you be very specific? Procedures for?
Procedures for what to do when there's a possible controversial thing happening within our district, no matter what it is. Could be anything, anything at all. A comedian that some people think is distasteful and other people don't. Like, it could be anything that could be controversial. We should have a safety and security or a procedure on how to at least make sure when the public knows and when they should know, and what we're going to do in terms of safety security for our students around whatever that event is. I just think it's important to define it moving forward.
I wish I knew the policy manual well enough that I could say, I know just the one to do that.
Can I make a comment?
That's not my job.
Yeah. And I just want to make sure that everybody's clear. All I have ever cared about with policy is trying to get it right. Yeah. Ms. Tracy, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make I hear what Mr. Krasnoff is saying, but that is also what we pay a large portion of our budget to our administrators and our staff to do what he's saying. And at some point, we have to trust our staff and not feel that we have to be so prescriptive and tell them an outline of how to do it. So that is just my balancing act there. At some point, when do we trust the professionals? When do we trust the people? Because I'm not an educator. I'm not an 092, an 093 holder. I don't claim to be. So at some point, I need to trust the people that we have hired and put in charge to do their jobs.
Mr. Krasnoff?
In response, Mr. Hayes, I agree with you. However, there's 9 people on the board, and if 2 or 1 of the 9 thinks it's a controversial issue, maybe central office doesn't. It doesn't mean it still may not be a controversial issue, and we should have, in my mind, some kind of protection for the district. And it's not to say that central office can't make the right decision, or either way. It's just it's good for practice in my mind for a board to be able to be involved in the controversial stuff. That's all I was getting at.
Yeah, so I would just ask that if anybody that is going to support this, that they not only submit, but attend the policy committee meeting or meetings and help them craft this. Because I'm afraid we're flying blind here. I'm not on the policy committee anymore, but that's my only statement. And then hopefully we can move this to a vote.
Mrs. Flynn.
I'll respond. I will be a no vote on this, and I will absolutely be attending policy committee meetings, and I hope we can garner more input from our community, and that's the main people I'm hoping to hear from in between then. So just to know my intent, I will be at any policy committees meetings where this is on the agenda with amendments and language.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, out to the public. Any comments? Reminder that you're not allowed to speak to the same agenda item if you've already spoken to it. So I just ask that the content of your comments be materially new.
Sure. Hi, Tracy Rodriguez. I have a few questions, a few comments on this, and I think they will be new.
Just so I'm clear, it's not back and forth. So yes, you can pose the questions, just understand we can't answer them.
Thank you. The only question I have, you guys have been discussing, and maybe you can clarify after if you feel appropriate, is just the understanding of if you can, to your points of approve something today and put forward further changes to, I just agree with your points on that. This one is better. I'm personally, from a community member, thinks it needs to be way more robust, but it's still better. Is that something you can do? And I just am not familiar with that, and I didn't know if you could provide clarity. But to your point, two things. One, I really very much appreciate, as a community member, as a parent who went through the event of the 2 weeks ago, the fact that we do feel heard tonight by some members, and the fact that I appreciate your process very much. I'm on the RTM. I very much appreciate how frustrating it must be to be down the road with the policy, have an event come up, and have this come up. So I just want to say I do appreciate it. But I think the fact that people are listening and that this touched so many people so deeply is so important, that it shows a lot from the board to be able to go back to something. And I just wanted to say I appreciate that. And then also, I heard you loud and clear on what specifics you'd want. I'd be happy to be a community member to engage. I don't know if that's something possible either. I'm new to this, but some specifics. I think when outside speakers come in, one thing I would love to see added is a standard for communication with the stakeholders. So whether that be the PTA at the school, whether that be outreach to parents at the school, if there's something that you feel is controversial coming in, to just give parents especially more time so that they don't have to have heated conversations. They could actually have very nice, productive conversations to understand if this is something appropriate. So timing to me for this particular one, which I do feel like would fall under controversial with the Linda McMahon visit, a Wednesday night before a Friday morning, just felt completely inappropriate. Other things I think you could look into are opt-out policies. So if there is something particularly controversial or something that some parents don't believe in or want to subject their children to, that they could potentially have an opt-out where you can still send your child to school that day without subjecting them to something that you truly feel like is going to be harmful to them. I understand that where does that line drawn? And I don't have the answer to that, but it's just something to get that conversation going. I also think if recording is going to be involved of our students as part of a controversial thing, that needs to be clearly stated. That was something I was personally very upset by in this last visit. The recording of our children to be used on a national campaign, things like that are very upsetting, highly controversial, no matter what side you're on. Again, I think things like that need to be opt out, I'm sorry, I'm saying that incorrectly. You might have caught that. Need to be opt in, not opt out. So we got a message, very quickly. Thank you. Can I wrap up the sentence? We got a message stating that, our children will be recorded, and like sort of this FYI, 3 paragraphs down, in a message on Parent Square saying, you know, that you
Okay,
could tell
that's your
us.
3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other members of the public?
I appreciate the complexity of deciding what controversial means, and I would
I'm
like
sorry,
to.
again, name and address?
Oh, John Fallon, 123 Wilson Street, Fairfield. I understand the complexity of controversial. Like, that's not what the concerns about this policy are. It's a process question. You sat in a room together on Tuesday, January 27th, and the next morning you announced that. The fact that you had that conversation about controversial issues and you didn't see a
Okay,
connection.
Mr. Fallon, I do need comments on the policy, please.
The bare minimum you can do is go back to the drawing board. You clearly do not understand the needs of this community when it comes to issues like this. The bare minimum is to go back to the drawing board and try again. I don't care how long you worked on it before. You clearly are out of touch. If you think you could discuss that and the next morning send that email and not think it was a problem, that's shocking. The bare minimum is you go back to the drawing board. Thank you.
Any other members of the public? Thank you.
Hi, Amy Grayson, 61 Twin Lanes. I am VP of Fundraising at Burr Elementary. I've booked all of the author visits for the last 4 years, including I'm the one who booked Chad Sell and got him out to all of the schools, and then got the call that Chad Sell was taken away because a small group of parents decided that he was controversial. 4 or 5 parents made a stink out of 3 schools.
Okay, again, I need you
And I'm
speaking to the
speaking,
policy, please.
I am speaking to the policy because I go by the rules, okay? I make sure that I look through, are these bestsellers? Have they won awards? I make sure that there's nothing controversial about a single author that I have booked for 4 years at Burr Elementary. I get nothing but pats on the back, thank you, from principals, assistant principals, staff, and so on. I make sure that all of my flyers are put out a month before. I make sure that all of my parents know that these people are coming. I would love to book a drag queen to come in to the library and read to the kids because I think that's fun and amazing, but that's for me. That's not for everybody, and I know that because that would be controversial. I follow the rules. I am not a paid employee. I am a volunteer who works her butt off to make sure that I do what I am told to do by the staff. And the way that this went down the other day was not following the rules based on something that could be controversial. I look through the lens of everything for every author that comes in for these students. I hope to do it at Tomlinson. I hope to bring us in more free authors, okay? I don't want you guys to have to pay for all of this. I hope to bring more to these children on a daily basis, and I hope to do it for everybody regardless of what side we stand on politically. And what was coming into McKinley had such a root in something that only stood for one side and had nothing to do with public schools. Go put it in a Catholic school. Go put it somewhere else. It was controversial because that's not why you send your kids to public schools. People have a choice to have a viewpoint from Turning Point.
Okay, again, you need to be on the policy, please.
The
So
policy is that,
rules.
the policy was that this was controversial and it was, and the rules were not followed based on what I have to do as a volunteer.
Thank you.
Hello, Emma Barron, 845 Naps Highway. I'm also an RTM member representing District 6. Little off the cuff, so excuse me thinking while I'm speaking. I want to sort of, as a D6 rep and as somebody who heard from current McKinley parents and previous, give a little bit of my personal context to this situation.
Ms. Barron, just so you know, this isn't about the
No, I
situation,
agree.
just the policy,
Yes,
please.
Yes, to the policy. Essentially, people's concern with the policy. I sort of just want to speak to that being
I think there's a lot of feelings about it. And I think that we are all feeling that in this conversation. And I think that in talking about the policy, I wanted to clarify from, District 6, is sort of the idea that the concern around this policy is truly coming from community concern. And I just sort of want to like refocus that because I've seen some decorum from some members during this meeting that have been really disturbing. And I just want to sort of refocus the idea that people are just coming from a shared concern for our children and for the community. And to try and keep that in mind when evaluating this policy. Sorry. Just because I understand how heated it can get talking about a controversial policy and what that means for our students. But I just think that we're getting a little bit taken away by the feelings behind it and the opinions rather than the root of it, which is concern that public schools are fulfilling their mission and that we all care very deeply about our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hi, Mick McGarry, Fairfield Education Association. I just wanted to speak to, the support of the FEA for this policy. It's not universal. While we do wish to be protected in our classrooms because, issues do come up, there are still some issues with this policy as there were before when it was sent back previously. The original language, I think we find much more generalized about, the fact that we must foster an environment that embraces differences of opinions. But some of the bulleted or numbered points, some of this is just, you could boil it down to one, just be a teacher. I don't know if it's necessary to include things like that instruction is a balanced matter without bias or prejudice, that is being a teacher or leading class discussions, when refraining from sharing personal views. Again, I don't know if that needs to be repeated in this policy. But the part that causes us some pause is the definition of controversial because history and society moves faster than curriculum does. Yes, all teachers should be instructing with the approved curriculum. However, the example I used in the policy committee previously, January 6, 2021 was not controversial on January 6, 2021. Now it is. And the curriculum has not been updated to reflect that. So the other point where it is that students or balanced factual information to help students objectively analyze, that does, yes, that is, again, good solid teaching. But when you come to a controversial issue where opinions are taking the place of facts, that's where we have some issue. So while I understand you're working very hard, I understand too that it must be frustrating not to have amendments. The language as is, I think, the narrative seems protective. The definitions and some of the guidelines, perhaps not so much. So we just ask you to consider that while you're thinking and debating. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Okay, back to the board. A couple of points I would like to raise. First of all, again, reminder about process. I would have hoped for something like this to have greater buy-in from the board. So at this point, I'd have no problem going back to the original language. But it's not coming back to policy. You had your chance to make amendments. If anyone, just so that you know, there has never been a policy where we have not been willing to bring it up. When I say not going back on the agenda, it's not going back on the next agenda. If somebody wants to do the work of crafting language that they feel defines controversial, then I'm open to that. I support this language as is. But if the board does not, first of all, one thing I do want to make clear about the event of 2 weeks ago. The content was not controversial. The content was fully known by staff. The content was full. I absolutely appreciate that the public was not aware of the full content. I completely understand that, and I understand all those who've written to us and find the speaker controversial, the sponsor controversial, but the content was fully known to us and vetted. Therefore, this entire policy would not have applied. The name of the policy is controversial issues. The topic was civics, a state mandated requirement. The content was a civics trivia game to which we had access to, staff had access to all of the questions ahead of time. The event was entirely led by staff. That was not controversial. I fully acknowledge the controversy surrounding the speaker and surrounding the sponsors. Absolutely. I definitely hear the points about if the content had been controversial. I fully think those are great points regarding students participating or not, videotaping or not, if the topic had been controversial. Those might be things to consider elsewhere. To Mr. McGarry's point about some of those points not being helpful to staff, I think where they were intended to be protective of staff was that they were directions to parents. Parents, you need to know that this is what guides our staff and their decision making. So this was a policy meant for, you know, all of those groups. But if there isn't that interest, I just want to again reiterate, and if somebody on this board disagrees that the content of a civics trivia game where we had all the questions in advance, if that, such as who's the governor of the state of Connecticut? Of these symbols, which one represents America? The Statue of Liberty, the Declaration of Independence, the Philadelphia Liberty Bell. And then option D, all of the above. I would argue those are not controversial. This entire policy would not have applied. So therefore, there's no minor tweaking of this policy that would address the concerns raised by the public. And I am not undercutting the concerns. You know, it is perhaps that there was an underappreciation of the impact of the event. I'm not sure you are, sir, but we're going to continue. I thank you. So all I want to say is that those of you who want to vote against it, I'm fine with going back to the original language. I said it in policy. I wasn't willing to, I had no interest in dying on this hill. Staff was bringing forward CABE recommended language because our old policy was just that. It was old and doesn't say a whole lot. But if we are comfortable with that, then let's vote against this policy and be done with it. And at some point in time, if someone wants to go out there and craft all new language, I am happy to put it back on the policy agenda. I truly am. I don't think I, as policy chair, should be a gatekeeper there. It's our job to help do the work, facilitate that, and bring it back. But this board has given us zero direction. Zero. You have not brought forward any amendments. So I would love for those people who want to vote against it to chime in one more time and pick. Do you want this one? Do you want the old one? Because if you're choosing the old one, and I'm willing to give you my vote, then please know I am charging you with the policy rewrite. I'm not saying that as a challenge. I'm saying I'm done with it because I have nothing. All of the concerns that have been raised here, and I'm going to say this one last time, I'm not trying to invalidate these concerns. People's observations, their perspectives, their opinions, their feelings. I'm not invalidating any of that. I'm saying this policy wouldn't have applied. So before we take a vote, I kind of would like to know where to put my vote. So anyone who has spoken against the policy, I would just like you to tell me where you stand at this point, knowing it would not have applied 2 weeks ago. Mr. Krasnoff? Oh, I thought you said you were voting for the policy.
I still want to delete it and write a separate policy on procedures and safeguards, but obviously that was voted down. So I guess it is what it is. And I understand you don't want to take it up again.
No, I want to be, sorry.
No,
I'll
I'm
let you
just,
finish.
I'm not sure that this policy can be what I want it to be. That's my concern. I think it's a separate policy needs to be done. And to your point, if this wouldn't have anything to do with 2 weeks ago or a year ago or 2 years ago or any time a controversial thing has come up with the community, then we have a problem with this policy, which is what I'm saying. We need a separate policy. And it could be anything controversial. It's just, we need some kind of safeguards and procedures for people to follow. And I'm not trying to tell central office how to do their job either, but I want to give them guidance and give them the support to be able to do things that everyone's going to be able to get behind and say, you followed what we told you to follow, whether the public's okay with it or not. At least we set guidelines. I think that's important.
Okay, Ms. O'Neill?
I think what is really difficult is that when we say that this did not apply, the board did not see any of the content. So I cannot make that judgment. The other thing is I'm fine going back and working on new language. Like I've said before, I think I have a completely new perspective on this. And given that we have gotten so much feedback from the public, I also think it's important if a speaker, even if it's, if the sponsor of the speaker is controversial enough that it brings up this kind of reaction from our constituents, I think we need to go back and look at this policy.
Ms. Flynn?
I would also agree that with the feedback we've gotten from our community, one of our charges is to be representative of our community, and I feel like that is part of our charge. I think we've kind of gotten to, I think I'm the last one that spoke, so I'd kind of just like to call the question of what's on the table right now, which is the current motion, and
Okay,
see.
call to question is not a debatable point. It's an immediate vote. That means there is no more discussion and we go straight to vote. So this requires a 2/3 to pass. And because we're at 8, we do need 6 out of 8, if I've done the math on that right. So those of you in favor of calling the question, please raise your hand. Okay, Ms. Flynn, Ms. Maxon Cannelli, Mr. Asa, Ms. O'Neill, those opposed.
You want to do it one more time?
Let me explain what call the
Yeah,
question is. I
explain.
apologize. That was wrong. I went too quickly through. Calling the question is simply a call to end debate. That's all it does is that it ends debate. That comments have been enough. So if you're not interested in hearing from, yes, I apologize. I rushed that one. It means there are no more questions and we move to the vote. So let me try that again. Those in favor of calling the question, please raise your hand. Mrs. Bardenwerper, Ms. Flynn, Mrs. Maxon Cannelli, Mr. Asa, Ms. Rinaldi, Ms. O'Neill, those opposed. Mr. Lee and Mr. Krasnoff, motion passes 6-2. So at this point, we will take a vote on the policy. Kind of wishing I voted against that now. Okay, so those in favor. Mrs. Bardenwerper, Mr. Lee, Ms. Rinaldi, Mr. Asa, those opposed. Mrs. Flynn, Mr. Krasnoff, Ms. O'Neill, I will abstain on that. So motion, oh my God, I missed the count. Motion passes 4-3-1. Thank you. Next on the agenda is new business, the second quarter financial report.
Everybody left for the most exciting part. Should we wait? Would you like me to start or should we wait for the members to return? So I just figured I'd start by going over the contents of the packet regarding the quarterly report. So In the contents that you received, there'd be a memo, which is basically a summary of my assumptions and what we believe are driving some of our budget assumptions. A summary of the accounts by major category, a statement of accounts by major classification, which is a detail line item account by account, and a grant revenue and expense by program report, which would show, which is essentially profit and loss statements for grant revenues. So for Q2 through the end of the year right now, we're projecting a surplus of about 948,575. And I would just, when I talk about the surplus, I would just say that these are estimates based on assumptions that we have, and it is still relatively early in the fiscal year, so things can always change. Major drivers we're seeing are in personnel services. That's about a $900,000 surplus that we're projecting right now. And that ties to what we talked about in the budget and reduction of FTEs, and also based on some employees that are on leave, on long-term leave right now and are not encumbered. So you'll see savings there, but some of the savings, we put in an assumption that some of these teachers that are on leave would return. So that's what you'll see in the summary. As we go down to, may be useful to go to the summary page, which is the major classification. As we move down, we're also looking at a surplus, potential surplus in fixed charges of about 860,000. And that kind of, my memo is a little bit more detailed, and I tried to put a lot of information in there to describe these, so I'm just highlighting them. But we're seeing a potential surplus there of about $860,000, which falls in line with our assumptions in personnel services. Pupil personnel expenses, we're projecting a small deficit there of $248,000. And we would note that the costs in special education are volatile and currently and are also impacted by our excess cost grant, which is currently projected at 68% from the state. Of the 279,620, there is a small deficit in transportation bus aids. We would note that this line was reduced as part of the approved board amendments for the town adopted budget. So after the town adopted its budget, the board made adjustments based on that number, and this had a reduction of about, this line had a reduction of about $50,000 after these adjustments. School expenses, just a small surplus, a small deficit of $2,700 that's related to printers, printing and copying. Support expenses, we see a small deficit related to about $25,000, and we would just note the transfer of $125,000 from legal business services to SPED expenses in the pupil personnel services category. And in prior years, the legal services were combined into one line. We split them out into separate lines and funded them separately, and so they're in two different major categories, so that's why that transfer's there. Maintenance and operations, this is where we're projecting one of our largest deficits right now, and that's really in the maintenance services accounts, and a large driver of that is snow and unexpected maintenance projects that we've been seeing as a result of the colder weather. For capital outlay, we expect everybody to be on track. And like I said, this is an analysis based on assumptions. I hope I'm right, could always be wrong. And I tried to lay out, like I said in the memo, what was driving our assumptions. And generally, when we make our assumptions where we can, we try to use data and year-to-date spending to drive what we think is going to happen moving forward, and also just qualitative data, like talking with departments and seeing kind of what issues they have that are coming up. So, and it's always changing. I could say two things off the top of my head that have changed since we wrote this report and took the data. So, you know, it's good to see, and we're trying to predict as accurately as possible, but at the end of the day, they are estimates. So that's all that I would have.
Thank you so much. I just had one quick question from Finance Committee, and maybe Mr. Asa remembers this. We had asked in Finance to have, because we thought it would be illuminating, not only for this board, but even more so for when this gets presented to Board of Finance, what have been the unexpected maintenance projects of the current school year, things that we hadn't budgeted for, to have that as an actual separate memo with this.
Yeah, we have that memo for this Friday's packet.
Oh,
Mr.
okay.
Papa
All right.
George, we're trying to, We have a narrative for it. We're just trying to list some of the projects and some of the dollar amounts that are associated with it. Mr. Papa George is doing the best he can to gather that information. So hopefully this Friday we'll have all the details, if not definitely by next week, because there's been more stuff popping up as everyone's been made aware of over the
Right.
last couple of days with sprinkler heads bursting because of the cold. So we're just trying to make sure that we're as accurate as possible, because we did have that prepared last year when we went to the other town bodies, just to show them that we operate not only within our budget, but we also have significant unexpected costs that come up throughout the year, particularly in maintenance, aside from the other things like special education that vary sometimes with students and services and their needs throughout the school year. So we're working on that.
Thank you. And just to Mr. Krasnov, that, to look for that memo too, because that should be part of the presentation to help them understand how well we're managing with the money that we were given. So, all right, questions, please. Mr. Krasnov.
Well, that was my first thing. Thank you for this. This is amazing. We haven't really gotten this kind of detailed summary before, so I love seeing it like this, broken down by category. It's a lot easier to follow when I was looking through all the information and not having to go line by line and figure it out myself. But that being said, is there anything you see now that we have a little bit better projections that cause any concern with the budget that we passed? Is there anything that you want to bring to our attention to keep an eye on, or are you feeling pretty good? It looks pretty balanced, which is nice, but was there anything that stuck out?
You're saying for FY 26, 27? I mean, I would say one thing would be, there were reductions to transportation, and that's dependent on some extra work that we have to do. So I would say when we're looking at this, we should, and speaking with Angelus, because we've spoke a lot about it since our last meeting, I think that's something that we would continue to monitor. So that would be one of the things that I'd be most concerned about in next year's budget.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that too, I think we did a really good job this year in making sure when we budgeted accurately for personnel. And I think that we have a surplus there, because I think that it was over budgeted in the past, not necessarily only with FTE, but with actual dollar amounts. And back when we started this process, and then when Frank jumped on board, I think Terry did a really good job in making sure we were more accurate in our projections with personnel. So I think we're really good. So I wouldn't use this surplus to say, hey, we got some room to cut there, because she did all of that already. So thank you, Terry.
Mrs. Flynn.
Thank you very much for the memo. It's great and very succinct. I agree with Mr. Krasnov. The separation of the legal line, I also think will be appreciated by the other town bodies. Do you see that area being a cause of concern, or was that just, you've been talking about like getting everything up to date with Munis and where things are? Is that like a budgeting, or do you just kind of like where it's sitting for the book? I don't know if that's like a question.
So one thing I would note, there is an annual state report that's due, and you have to be very specialized in reporting special ed costs. And this was always an account that we had to manually dissect and pull out the special ed costs. So for reporting purposes and ease of reporting to the state, I felt it was better that we had it split out.
I had an assumption. Thank you for the explanation. And then for maintenance and the snow removal, I think we all kind of, I think the way it was described by our IDs was we don't need to go anywhere to ski. We could do it in our high school parking lots, or I know you could do it at North Stratfield. Where are you kind of seeing that? How are you guys kind of approaching that? I know in the past it used to be like, come to us with emergencies. Is that how you're looking at it? Like, how are you viewing it with the other town bodies right now with that?
Well, we're pretty much at budget right now. So any more significant snow, or even anything that would cause us to have to pre-treat, go out and sand and clean, will bring us over budget. That was one bad storm that really kind of threw everything out of whack. Angelus did a great job in working with our vendor, our contractor. We did have to remove some snow from our high school and middle school parking lots. If not, it would have been piles, as you could probably see when you went over there to Ward last week for future Mustang night. So that, taking that out, hauling that away costs money as well. It's hit or miss, right?
We've just always, like I said, I've been sitting in the audience for a long time. We've always heard if there's an emergency, come to us. So I think we've all known that this has been probably the snowiest winter we've got in a long time. So I would just encourage as a board member to make sure that that story is told. I don't think it's going to be much different on the town end either. So.
Okay, Mr. Lee?
I want to kind of piggyback on what Mrs. Flynn said about the snow. But what I'm concerned about is the effects of the snow. Like we saw these last few days, cold weather. What happens inside with this things that normally don't happen, sprinkler heads, pipes, things like that. We're not out of winter yet, right? The stupid little animal saw it's shallow for 6 more weeks. So, so I want to make sure that, is there a contingency for something like that? Or is it now we got to go to the boards and say, hey, we need this because of that. And pipes breaking at home are expensive. So if it breaks in the school, right, there's a lot more to it also. So where are we with that, and what does the finance rep have to do? Or
Well, right now, as you can see, we'd have to ask for a transfer of funds from where we have a surplus into maintenance if we had any further damage, so to speak. We're not going to go to any town boards if we're predicting a surplus right now. But if we get into Q3, I mean, this is as of December 31st. It's been freezing cold since, so we do have some exposure with our heating costs as well. But at some point, if after Q3 we were in some trouble, we may need to do something if we get another big snowstorm. But let's be hopeful, and these two folks are monitoring things really closely, and we're in constant communication every day. So I'm not worried anymore.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that with risk management, the town does have a property insurance. The deductibles are pretty high, but if there was a very big loss as a result of some of these things, then that's somewhere where, that's part of the story here. But I look at this Q2 port not as something that I'm done and I'm putting it down. It's really a starting point for me for Q3. I'm already thinking about it, so it's just something that I've just continue to look at.
great. And yeah, I agree with everyone else. The way it was presented is great. Thank you.
Mr. Krasnoff?
Also, just to follow up to Mr. Lee, you never know, we can get 70-degree weather for 3 months and not need AC or heat. So, who knows? The year could change. Yeah, I'm hoping for that, by the way. Thanks.
We don't have that luck.
Or it
Don't
could-
jinx us.
Or it could be 95 in May. So let's hope that doesn't happen.
Okay, any other questions or comments? So
I just
again,
want to make a comment.
oh, sorry, Mr. Asa.
Yeah, just from the finance committee standpoint, I just wanted to let the board know that, Frank and Terry did a very good job presenting to the committee, and we tried to work with them, especially with Frank being new in the role, with kind of preparing for what we thought some of the board questions would be. So it sounds like the work was done well, and just wanted to commend both of these individuals for not only their work through the budget, but I think I got the feeling after being on this board for 8+ years, it seems like we're in really good hands with these two professional accountants. And I think we will start to see more and more better reports as we move forward. So thank you, guys.
Agreed. Yeah, so I think the one charge I think we should especially make to Mr. Krasnoff as he represents us at the Board of Finance meeting is no one should get carried away by that surplus number. Because obviously that has a target on it for a few reasons of just, well, the key reason being is that surplus money that could be used to pre-purchase, and we just don't know yet. And that's where that report that will hopefully come out by Friday, or at the very least be in your hands before that Board of Finance meeting, is these are the things that were unplanned for that have already happened this year, and it's only the big mid-February. So thank you so much. No other questions or comments? Oh, sorry, Mr. Krasnoff?
So to that point, like we know from previous reports, sometimes things are kind of lagging a little bit. Is there anything like utilities or anything like that that's lagging behind that's not really captured yet in this report that we should be aware of? Just in terms of showing a surplus, let's say we're a month behind in our energy costs, knowing how cold it's been. I'm just using an example. Is there anything like that in here, or this pretty much captures most of it?
Well, I would say the idea of, things lagging with energy costs is like, the reports run as of December, and that's before you have the really cold weather. So what I would say is lagging is that we really don't have great experience for the cold months. I mean, we have some data looking at it in the current system, but we're not out of the woods with that yet. And just with price increases, I know with technology, one of the our IT director became aware that there may be a very hefty increase with some computer equipment, and like around 20% of an increase that they're talking about it. And that's something that, like I said, when I drafted this report, I didn't know about. It's based on a conversation today. So those things are always kind of, lagging in a sense.
So is it right to say, to an extent, your opinion, and so the public's aware, yes, we may have a surplus, but that surplus may be closer to flat than we really think it is at this point?
I mean, the way I would say it is, it's right now what our assumptions tell us is yes, that we have that, but it's important to remember it's all based on assumptions, and there could be something that we don't know just because we don't know yet. Yeah.
And just to piggyback on Frank's point there, we were notified today from our vendor, and Mr. Taddy shared with us that we should be preparing because of the chip shortage, not because of tariffs and all this other stuff but because there's a chip shortage, and a lot of that is because they're being bought up for all the data centers that are driven by artificial intelligence, that the RAM is not being sold to like HP and Lenovo. They're being sucked up by Google and Amazon, that we should expect a minimum of a 20% surcharge on the Chromebooks that we buy for our students. So we are going to talk in the next couple of days and probably ask the board to do a transfer, that if we can pre-buy in the next 2 weeks with our vendor, it could save us of upwards of $80,000 to $100,000 on just the same equipment for next that we would buy if we waited. Well, if we wait beyond the next 2 weeks. So I think it would behoove us to act on that now and pre-buy, and then we can shift some money around later on for things for next year if we have to. So I think that would escalate to the top of our priority list if we do have some monies, because it would save us $80,000 to $100,000 at the very least.
And just refresh
something that we have to buy.
And just refresh my memory, so then that would come off of next year's budget? That was something we allocated money to, and we just want to speed it up?
Correct. That would be important if some of this surplus stands. It would be one of the top priority items, that, and possibly, if we can identify anything else.
But it's not one we can wait for the weather on. You're talking about 2 weeks.
Yeah, we're gonna have to move quickly and maybe have to shift some priorities around for the end of this year's spending.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you so much. Moving on to agenda item 9, superintendent's report.
Just a few things. I know we're getting a little late into the evening. Just want to remind parents that preschool registration is now open. ECC offers a full-day pre-K program for 4-year-old children at Ward, Stratfield, and Holland Hill. The half-day options are also available for 3s and some 4s. So visit the registration page on our website to register. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about our ECC offerings, we do have a parent information session next Thursday night, 7 p.m. right here in this room. That information will be on our social media, and we'll also send it out via Parent Square. Unfortunately, if you're a first-time parent and you don't have other children, you're not on Parent Square. So if you can get that information out, if you know any families, that'll be first time pre-K registrations. That there is an information center next session next Thursday night right here in the boardroom at 7 p.m. if they want to hear about it. But we also have a lot of information on our website. You could also call and we'll direct you to our preschool director, early childhood, Kristen Bruno, for questions and answers as well. I'd like to congratulate Mill Hill fifth graders Lydia Pope and Eva Cotrado, who are recipients of the Connecticut Association of Schools Arts Awards. This honor recognizes students who demonstrate outstanding talent in performing or visual arts, along with strong citizenship and cooperation. Burr kindergarten students showcased their author skills during a special writing celebration. Students proudly shared their work with families and took part in a gallery walk to read classmates' writing and give thoughtful compliments. And I want to give a big shout out to our own Director of Social Studies and Student-Centered Learning. Colleen Sousa was honored with the Excellence in Holocaust Education. She recently received the Simon Conover Recognition for Excellence in Holocaust Teaching from Voices of Hope, a Connecticut-based nonprofit organization dedicated to Holocaust education and remembrance. Colleen worked with Daphne Geismar, author of Invisible Years, to develop engaging student curriculum now used in our Fairfield Public Schools classrooms and other high schools across the state. So congratulations to Colleen. And another shout out to Mill Hill students who collaborated with Fairfield Ludlow High School students for a sold-out production of Frozen Kids at Fairfield Ludlow High School Auditorium, creating a memorable evening for the Fairfield community. Thank you for all those who made this a wonderful production.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the superintendent's report? Mrs. Flynn?
Just a quick note. I know in the past for ECC, they used to advertise at the library. And that was a pretty successful spot for like the morning, book groups and such. That was just a plug that was a regular place that advertisement used to go out.
I'll double check to make sure we're still doing that. If not, we'll make sure we reach out to Scott.
Yeah, just came to my mind when you're speaking. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on to agenda item 10, committee and liaison reports. Mr. Lee?
Yeah, so on the two committees, first one on the Dwight Building Committee, they have narrowed down the architect selection, and they'll be going out to bid shortly to the 5 companies, and they will come in the next couple weeks and get ready for their presentations to the rest of the board. So that's moving where it's supposed to be. As far as the HVAC IAQ committee, the Board of Selectmen approved the change in the charge. They have added the job to do the fire alarms and some sprinklers. Well, now sprinklers in Fairfield Woods School. So that is going to be, that was voted on last Thursday. They're meeting this Friday to vote and approve on the vendors and things like that. The fire marshal of the town has said you can't start the job until all this equipment is actually on site. So once they approve that, they'll be ready to order the equipment, get it on site. Once they have it on site, they'll be able to start the job. They are projecting that the job will still continue last day of school and be done over the summer.
Thank you. Any others? Ms. Rinaldi?
Wonderful Board of Health meeting Monday night. So starting off very positive. February is American Heart Health Month. So wear red and know your numbers. They are setting up centers around to check your heart numbers. So it's a trend they started last year. It's very popular. Also, they're looking at the trends of influenza, RSV, and COVID, and they're at very low levels. This was also consistent with last month, and it's continuing to trend downward. And then also some good news in the district. Sarah Payne, our head nurse, joined the Connecticut Nursing Association, and she's the head of technology. She's a liaison and head of technology. So props to her.
Sarah's been a great addition to the town. She's doing a lot of good things and trying to really be proactive in servicing our students and really doing a nice job with the nurses, even looking at getting them some training in conjunction with our special ed staff. She reached out the other day to make sure that they're PMT trained as well. So I really enjoy working with her, and hope we hold on to her for a long time.
Yeah, rave reviews. Really, everyone loves her. Really impressed with her.
Thank you. Mr. Krasnoff.
Just a reminder again, Wednesday, have your stuff about the elementary schedule to us prior to Wednesday. If you could have it by maybe Monday, that would be great. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Open board comment. Any? No? Public comment. Anyone like to come up and address the board? Just so long as it's to a new item.
Mick McGarry, Fairfield Education Association. I want to start with a very heartfelt thanks to the board for taking on the elementary schedule. It has been a real challenge for our elementary teachers for a long time. So we really appreciate the board and Dr. Jay-Z for addressing that because it has been a real challenge. And one thing I did receive some communication during the meeting that we might want to consider making an anonymous input from teachers because they there were some who said, "Hey, I wanted to," but they didn't want to put their name on the form. The other thing I'd like to thank Angelus and his crew for fixing a board so quickly. It was a lot of work and it was uncomfortable and cold. So thank you very much for getting that work done. And there's also been, some temperature with our recent cold snap. There have been some buildings with temperature issues, and Angelus has been very responsive to helping out our teachers who have been caught in the cold for a little while. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no more public comment, motion to recommend a motion that the regular meeting of the Board of Education adjourned, moved by Mrs. Rinaldi, seconded by Mr. Krasnoff. All in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.